A man finds himself in a dark, menacing forest surrounded by shadowy creatures with glowing eyes. He realizes he has been transported to another world, but possesses no special skills. With only a younger body and a status screen to his name, he falls to his knees in despair, crying out, wondering how he could possibly survive. This, however, is merely the fantasy of Mamiya Yudo, a salesman enduring another sweltering day of outside work. He laments the heat and being forced to wear a suit by his obstinate superior, wishing he had driven to work even if it meant paying for gas himself. He thinks about his job at a black company, an exploitative firm obsessed with passion pay. His director enthusiastically rallies the staff to do their best, but Yudo feels trapped. He believes that if he quits, no other company would accept him, so he must endure. His life is a monotonous cycle: work, commute, sleep. His salary is barely enough to pay the bills. Seeking a brief escape, he stops by a bookstore and notices a new publication. He reflects on his recent hobby, reading stories about ordinary protagonists who are transported to other worlds, ISEKAI'D, and become overpowered. Having played fantasy games for a long time, he finds these tales of power and adventure to be a great comfort. Sighing, he tells himself to get back to work, but then jokingly makes a plea. He looks up, escaping into his fantasy, and asks a goddess-sama to please take him to another world too. In the darkness, a pair of sharp, slitted eyes flash open. A voice, cold and clear, responds to his idle wish. I've found you. A sudden, violent crash shatters the mundane scene. Yudo flinches, his eyes wide with shock as a nearby bookshelf topples over. He is ripped from reality, tumbling helplessly through a black void. His briefcase slips from his grasp, lost to the emptiness. Just as suddenly, he is back on the street. His superior stares at the spot where he vanished, utterly bewildered, asking aloud if he just saw a ghost. Yudo, now standing nearby, can only respond with a confused. He had vanished from the street in a flash, leaving his superior staring at an empty space. In that same instant, Yudo found himself falling through an endless, black void. As he plummeted, a small, glowing entity materialized before him, offering a simple greeting. The being, appearing as a small child in a white robe, smiled and announced that from now on, it was thinking of sending him to another world. The realization struck Yudo with the force of a physical blow. He was being ISEKAI'D. He wondered if this meant the being before him was a god. Now floating in a featureless white space, Yudo tried to rationalize the situation. He concluded that this couldn't be happening. He must have collapsed from heat stroke and was having a strange dream. The entity, however, corrected him, stating that this was no dream and that she had pulled him into this space herself. With a burst of gleeful energy, the being spread its arms wide, enthusiastically describing the destination she had in mind. It was a fantasy world, she declared, a realm brimming with weapons, magic, and skills. The fantastic description ignited a spark of excitement in Yudo. If this was truly happening and not a dream, he reasoned, then perhaps he could receive a powerful cheat skill or two to go along with it. His hopeful question was met with a cold, sudden denial from an entirely new voice. A sharp-featured man with slick-back hair appeared in the void, stating plainly, "I'm not doing that." The man's interjection shattered Yudo's brief hope. Panic surged as he realized the implication. Being sent to a dangerous world with nothing would be a suicidal act. He pleaded to be returned to his own world, trying to dismiss the entire encounter as a dream he could simply forget. The goddess-like being floated above him, its expression unreadable. It explained that his very dissatisfaction with his current life was the reason it could appear before him in the first place. There was no negotiation. He would gladly go. With that, his descent began. Yudo plummeted towards a dark, menacing forest filled with monstrous creatures. As he fell, he recalled his past as a student immersed in virtual worlds. He wasn't against the idea of an ISEKAI, but he refused to accept a future where he would simply die in vain. This desperation ignited into a burning resolve. His face hardened, his thoughts filled with contempt for his director and the entity sending him to his likely death. He made a vow. In that case, he would force it to give him a cheat skill, no matter what it took. He confronts the shadowy man, demanding to know if his objective is simply to watch people suffer. He lays out his inadequacies. No experience in combat, magic, or any skills, just an average person with an unfit body. The man places a hand on his shoulder, his voice low as he asks if Yudo will go regardless. His desperation erupts into a furious shout. He points accusingly at the goddess, roaring that sending him there as he is would be a death sentence, and questioning if they're simply sending him to die for nothing. A flicker of hope ignites in his eyes as the goddess calmly agrees. She confirms that she has no such cruel hobby and concedes that she could perhaps help him with something. The negotiation becomes a frantic exchange. The goddess proposes making him young again, starting from 0 years old. Yudo immediately rejects this, questioning how a baby could possibly survive. He insists that without any skills, he'll die regardless and demands a blessing or a skill instead, or at least to be made 13 years old. The goddess dismisses his pleas, telling him he's asking for far too much. As a special concession, she offers him a unique gift, a handmade, always visible status screen. Initially grateful, Yudo's expression quickly shifts as he realizes the limited value of this and presses her for what else she will provide. Her patience wears thin. The goddess shrieks that he is too noisy and commands him to go. Even the shadowy man joins the cacophony, demanding a cheat skill. As a dark portal opens and begins to swallow him, Yudo screams in protest, yelling that nothing has been improved and questioning the point of a useless status screen. The goddess simply sighs in exasperation. As he vanishes, the goddess's expression shifts to a knowing, sinister smile. She declares that, regardless of his circumstances, he is destined to be the most blessed existence. A choice is laid before him: to awaken, to destroy, or to be destroyed. She muses as she looks forward to seeing which path he will ultimately take. Mamiya Yudo finds himself looking up at the canopy of a dense, unfamiliar forest. His thoughts immediately turn to the being responsible for his predicament, the entity he calls the Acorn Head God. The god has sent him into this wilderness, a place utterly alien to him. He sits on the damp earth. The rustling leaves a constant reminder of his isolation. He reflects on his life, realizing with a sinking feeling that as a dedicated RPG player, he has absolutely no experience with real-world survival games. As he despairs, his gaze falls upon his own hand. Something is different. His skin seems smoother. He quickly dismisses his complaints, realizing this is no time for them. The truth dawns on him as he examines his now youthful body. The god didn't just transport him, he made him younger. He collapses onto his hands and knees, a wave of regret washing over him. The god had only made him younger and given him a status screen. He wonders if he was too greedy during their negotiation, thinking things are going in his favor when they clearly were not. But then, a flicker of defiance returns to his eyes. He forces himself to focus on the positive. He did manage to extract something special from a god. Now that he's here, he can't give up so easily, and he must comfort himself with that thought. He pushes himself to his feet, dismissing the thought that he could only achieve so much against a higher status being. There is no time to lose. First, he will check his belongings. Then, he must find a sleeping place before dark, along with water, food, and a way to make fire. He empties his briefcase, taking inventory of his meager supplies. Among the useless contract papers and a now-dead company phone, he finds a wallet, a seal stamp, and a calculator. More importantly, he discovers a flashlight with batteries and a pair of screwdrivers, which he immediately identifies as potential makeshift weapons. With his few useful items identified, a fire of determination ignites within him. He clenches his fists, vowing to struggle until the very end and shouting a challenge to the distant Acorn Head God. He must accept this fate, but he will not do so quietly. He acknowledges the difficulty of moving in his leather shoes, but resolves to adapt, even if it means modifying his own clothes. He noticed a small, white circle shimmering at the edge of his vision. He wondered if it might be a button, something to activate the status screen the goddess had mentioned. The moment he focused his will upon it, a massive, translucent screen erupted into existence directly in front of him, causing him to cry out in shock. His eyes widened as he began to process the impossible sight before him. The realization gave way to frustration. The screen was so large that it completely obstructed his view of the path ahead. He could almost hear the goddess's mocking voice in his head, calling him a fool for the massive status screen she had designed, while also noting its convenience in being operable by thought alone. Focusing on the display, he saw his own name, Mamiya Yudo, at level 1. It listed his basic attributes: magic capacity, strength, intelligence, and others. He noted with some concern that the fields for blessing and title were completely empty. He then navigated to a different section, the skill list. He was stunned by the sheer volume. At a quick glance, there were over 100 different skills, neatly sorted into categories like combat type, magic type, support type, passive, and even creation type skills. Analyzing the interface further, he understood that skills could be learned by using skill points, though he currently had 0. He surmised they could be earned by leveling up or completing quests. The system was intuitive, much like a video game, even showing that skills could be upgraded. Deciding to be methodical, he resolved to write down his initial status. But as he was lost in his analysis, a hulking, horned beast burst from the foliage, its eyes glowing with malice as it lunged into the clearing directly before him. He froze, realizing with a jolt of terror that he had been so focused on the skill list that he hadn't paid any attention to his surroundings. A monster. He had never been in a fight in his life. Panic seized him as he wondered what he could possibly do to defeat it. He quickly assesses the creature before him. It stands about 30 to 40 centimeters tall, slightly larger than a rabbit. Realizing he must act, he decides his first step is to observe the monster and predict its movement. His mind races through the grim possibilities. The creature's primary weapon is clearly its horn. He knows that even if a blow isn't instantly fatal, he has no medical supplies and would eventually die anyway. A direct hit, he is certain, would kill him from the shock of the pain alone. He must find the safest possible way to handle this. He deduces that its method of attack will likely be a charge. With a plan forming, he quickly sheds his suit jacket, his expression hardening with resolve. This is the action he must take. Just as he prepares, the beast lunges forward with startling speed. He can only watch for a split second, shocked by how fast it runs. Reacting instantly, He throws the jacket over the charging creature's head. As he suspected, the beast charged straight ahead, and his plan to block its vision works perfectly, preventing it from landing an easy hit. The blinded beast thrashes wildly. He struggles to hold on, grimacing as he thinks of his ruined 60,000 yen custom suit. He screams in frustration for the creature to stop moving around. Amidst the chaos, he finds his opening. He wraps his tie around the beast's neck and pulls with all his might, using its own horn as a lethal fulcrum. He roars, fueled by the loss of his expensive necktie, warning the creature not to underestimate its sturdiness. He will end it with this. The struggle ceases. The horned beast lies dead on the forest floor. Yudo collapses beside it, panting from exertion, and weakly questions if it's truly over. He remains kneeling in the aftermath, the sole figure in the now silent clearing. A brilliant pillar of light descends from the heavens, bathing him in its glow. As the light fades, he catches his breath, realizing this is no time to celebrate his first victory. He needs to hurry and find a place to sleep. Just then, his eyes catch something in the distance. His gaze fell upon what he had spotted in the distance. A colossal, gnarled tree of impossible size, its trunk thick and ancient. Standing before it, now clad in a dark jacket with a white, four-leaf, clover-like symbol on the back, he contemplated the immense challenge, wondering if he could possibly climb it. With a guttural roar of exertion, he threw himself into the task, beginning the arduous ascent. As he climbed, a vivid memory of his former director surfaced, shouting encouragement as if he were still just an office worker. If a handhold was out of reach, he should just use his belt. His efforts paid off, and he finally hauled himself onto a high branch. Sweat beaded on his brow as he looked out over a seemingly endless sea of trees, realizing with a sinking feeling that he couldn't even see the edge of the forest, let alone a city. A small, ethereal form of the goddess appeared, offering a simple "don't worry." But his mind raced with the chilling certainty that the acorn-head bastard was truly trying to kill him from the very start. From his high vantage point, his gaze swept the horizon. He could see the sun, giving him a sense of direction. Beyond the vast expanse of trees, he spotted what looked like a river and a distant mountain. A plan began to form in his mind. If he could pass through that mountain and reach the flatland beyond, he might find a settlement. A sliver of hope solidified into firm resolve. His expression hardened with determination as he stared out at the wilderness. He would do it. He would get through this sea of trees. Mamiya Yudo recalls his abrupt arrival in this new world, summoned by a being he calls the Acorn Head God. He was given a younger body and a status screen to navigate this hopeless situation. Through quick thinking and courage, he managed to survive his first night by taking refuge in a tree. A new, harsh chapter of his life has begun. He bolts upright with a gasp, the phrase "a happy life in another world" echoing in his mind with frantic irony. For a moment, he had hoped it was all just a dream. The hard ground offers no comfort as he pushes himself up, groaning from the discomfort of his makeshift bed. He already misses the softness of his own. His expression hardens with resolve. He decides on his immediate goals: find a river and gather food along the way. He reminds himself that if he can't find anything else, he still has the horned rabbit as an emergency supply. He then glances at his wrist, a wave of realization washing over him. His watch. He can tell the time. He chides himself for not thinking of its other uses sooner. Recognizing the multifunctional tool from his modern world has an orientation function and a compass, an amazing asset in this wilderness. His thoughts are interrupted when he spots a small, light-colored bird fluttering nearby. The bird leads his gaze to a cluster of large, pale fruits hanging from a branch. They look edible. With a wide, joyous grin, he takes a massive bite. A fleeting thought of it being poisonous crosses his mind, but he dismisses it with a "you only live once" mentality and continues to eat. Satiated for the moment, he continues onward, feeling that he is slowly making progress. He then comes across a group of small, furry creatures, the Moku, and immediately begins gathering as many as he can. As he is gathering, a translucent screen materializes before him. Startled, he wonders what it is, then realizes it must be his status screen and decides to check it. He examines the interface, noticing an experience bar for his taijutsu skill. He reasons that it must have increased from defeating the rabbit, just as the gathering skill increased from collecting fruit. A realization dawns. He can increase his skill levels by performing the related actions. The implications of this discovery fill him with joy. He throws his arms up in celebration, exclaiming that this world is just like an otherworldly game. The status screen confirms his level 1 status and basic equipment. His elation settles into a determined calm. A small smile touches his lips as he clenches his fist. This is good news. With this system, he might actually be able to survive. His newfound hope is cut short as his attention snaps to a rustling in the nearby foliage. He had sensed something was there, but seeing it in person still comes as a shock. From the bushes emerges a small, grotesque creature, a goblin. He assesses it quickly, noting that unlike the animalistic horned rabbit, this is clearly a humanoid creature. Still, he reasons it's fine to kill it and feels confident that he will not lose. His confidence is immediately shattered. With a horrifying shriek, the goblin lunges forward, its wide mouth agape, catching him completely by surprise. The creature is on him in an instant. The force of the impact sends him reeling backward, a cry of pain escaping his lips as he hits the ground hard. Blood splatters as the goblin sinks its teeth into him. The searing pain brings a terrible realization. He was too naive. At level 1, his status is lower than the goblin's. He was completely outmatched. As he lies pinned beneath the creature, his fear gives way to a cold resolve. This is not a game NPC that will give him easy experience. It's a monster trying to kill him with full hostility. He understands now that he must discard his naive thinking and kill it without hesitation. With a surge of adrenaline, he acts. He thrusts his hand forward, deep into the goblin's gurgling maw, silencing its triumphant cries with a desperate, brutal counterattack. He pants for breath, leaning against a tree in the aftermath of the struggle. His suit is torn and stained. Looking down at the forest floor, he murmurs that this outcome was, perhaps, inevitable. His gaze settles on his bloodied hand. He hopes the wound doesn't worsen, internally scolding himself for the carelessness born from overestimating his own abilities. He realizes the fight could have gone much more smoothly if he had attempted a surprise attack instead. A sudden twitch startles him. His attention snaps towards the area where the goblin fell, noticing something there. The realization hits him with full force. This is not a game, and he must be more careful. The grim proof lies nearby. The mangled, severed arm of a fallen human, still encased in a gauntlet. It serves as a brutal reminder that in this world, humans can easily die. As he processes this horror, the corpse of the goblin he slew dissolves into a swirling vortex of black particles, vanishing completely from sight. He stands alone in the clearing, his gaze fixed on the spot where the monster just was. A strange sensation makes the hair on the back of his neck stand up, his senses suddenly on high alert. The feeling culminates in a jolt of pure shock, causing him to stumble backward and fall clumsily to the ground, letting out a startled cry. From the earth emerges the source of his alarm, a large, round, fluffy creature with tiny eyes and whiskers. It raises its paws and lets out a peculiar cry. Mokyu. His terror gives way to confusion. Looking up from the ground at the strange being, a single, unexpected thought crosses his mind. It's cute. He stumbles back, the brief thought of the creature being cute instantly replaced by alarm. It had just attacked him. He frantically tries to understand how the seemingly harmless being managed to launch an assault. Before he can react further, the creature cries out, Mokyu, and begins to conjure a swirling sphere of dark energy. Yudo realizes with horror that it's a magic spell, and he's already within its attack range. With no knowledge of the attack's nature, he understands his only option is to try and guard against it. The projectile of dark energy slams into his briefcase, which he thrusts forward as a makeshift shield. The impact is immense, and even with the bag absorbing some of the force, he grunts in pain, realizing that taking many more hits of that power would be fatal. Staggering, he knows he cannot simply continue blocking with his bag, nor is he confident he can dodge the next blast. A desperate resolve forms in his mind. He will not defend. He will charge forward. As he surges toward it, the furry creature seems surprised by his sudden aggression, letting out a questioning cry. He closes the distance in an instant, driving his fist into the creature with a brutal, solid impact. The creature bursts apart, dissolving into particles. Yudo stands over its remains, catching his breath. He reflects on how troublesome its long-range attack was, relieved he killed it before it could fire again. The adrenaline fades, and he collapses against a tree in utter exhaustion. A message appears in his vision. Your level has been increased to 2. He has finally reached level 2, but the only thought that consumes him is how relentlessly harsh this world is. Mamiya Yudo feels the harsh reality of his new existence. Sleeping in a tree did nothing to alleviate his profound exhaustion. The recent back-to-back battles against a goblin and a mole-like creature have taken a severe toll on his body. He clutches his arm, grimacing at the memory of the wounds he sustained, realizing he desperately needs to wash them. He stands alone, a solitary figure against the darkness, acutely aware of his own filth and dehydration. The thought consumes him. He stinks, he needs to wash himself, and he hasn't had enough water. He feels himself rapidly approaching his physical limit. As he pants from exertion, the distinct sound of rushing water reaches his ears. Through the dense foliage, a bright light glimmers. A surge of hope courses through him as he wonders if he has finally truly arrived at a source of water. The confirmation sends a jolt of adrenaline through his weary body. With a guttural roar of water, he breaks into a frantic sprint, leaping through the undergrowth towards the life-saving discovery. Having reached the small waterfall, he wastes no time. His suit jacket and shirt are removed and hung neatly on a nearby tree branch to dry in the air. Submerged in the cool stream, he takes stock of his provisions. He has successfully hunted a rabbit-like creature for meat and caught fish from the water. Most importantly, he cups his hands and gulps down the fresh, clean drinking water, finally quenching his desperate thirst. He looks upon his handiwork with satisfaction. The simple trap he constructed, designed to allow fish to swim in easily but make it hard for them to get out, has proven to be a great success. With his immediate needs for survival met, a new resolve hardens his expression. Standing in the water, he clenches his fists. Now he decides, is the time to learn fire magic. His tasks at the stream complete, he makes his way back through the woods to the spot he has designated as his sleeping place for the day. Back in his makeshift camp, and dressed once more, he accesses a system menu. He confirms his plan to use the 2 points he gained from leveling up to learn fire magic. With a look of intense hope, he decides to add another point, praying it will be enough to unlock the new skill. He clenches his fists in triumph as a notification confirms his success. Fire magic level 1 has been learned. His elation is immediate, a loud, hell yeah, escaping him. But his joy is quickly tempered by confusion as he reads the skill's description, which states it's for casting magic below 10 magic power. He wonders what that limitation implies. He recalls the Moki creature conjuring a dark orb of energy. He had expected to learn a direct combat spell like Fireball, which the system describes as an attack on a single enemy. The discrepancy between his expectation and the vague fire magic skill leaves him puzzled. Deciding that action is better than contemplation, he resolves to test the skill. He strikes a pose, pointing his finger like a gun, and shouts the commands he thinks should work. Fireball. Activate. His commands echo in the clearing, but nothing happens. He tries again, then considers that perhaps a different hand sign is required. Spreading his hands wide, he bellows with renewed effort, go. Fireball. Still, no flame appears. The only response is the quiet plip of a small pebble falling into the water. He stares at his hands in disbelief, his frustration mounting. He spent his precious, hard-earned points on this skill, and for it to do nothing is infuriating. Forcing himself to calm down, he analyzes the situation. He remembers the Moku's spell casting was accompanied by a black mist. If that mist was a manifestation of magic power, then his own inability to produce it might be the problem. He checks his skills again and realizes he lacks the short incantation ability. This means, to his dismay, that he'll have to resort to a full, spoken chant. Resigned, he adopts the classic pose of a mage, hand outstretched. He thinks to himself that he must adapt to the rules of this world. With a deep breath, he begins a formal, almost pleading incantation. Oh, fire spirit, lend me your power. I'm begging you. Fireball. The forest remains silent. No spirit answers. No flame ignites. He slumps, a weary smile on his face, realizing that simply shouting the spell's name in a dramatic way wasn't the solution either. His brief moment of calm shatters. He tries the incantation again, this time screaming the words with all his might. The utter lack of any result sends him into a rage, and he bellows his frustration into the empty woods. His fury dissolves into sheer desperation. He begins a frantic, almost comical series of attempts. He mimics the Moku's cry, begs the concept of fire itself to activate, and promises to do anything just to cast a single spell. He even performs a wild, flailing fire dance, his pleas echoing unanswered as he descends into a frenzy of failure. His frantic efforts to conjure fire had left him exhausted and demoralized. Huddled in the branches of a large tree, he muttered to himself, questioning the very concept of fire magic. Deciding it was a lost cause, he resolved to simply forget the whole ordeal. But the thought lingered. He reasoned that, as someone not from this world, there was no way he could possibly know the correct incantation. It must require chanting in this world's native language, a language he did not know. The realization offered no comfort, only another layer of impossibility. Overwhelmed by the starry night sky, he decided to simply go to sleep. Sometime later, by a river, he sighed in frustration. He had wanted to use fire to cook a proper meal of grilled fish and rabbit, but it was a hopeless wish. Resigning himself to his fate, he attempted to start a fire by primitive means. He supposed he had no other choice. Suddenly, a guttural cry shattered the quiet as a goblin lunged from the trees. Reacting on pure instinct, he thrust the sharp stick he was holding forward, impaling the creature through its face. As the goblin fell, he let out a breath of relief, a grim realization dawning on him. He was getting used to this. The encounter solidified his resolve. He decided he wouldn't bother with fire magic anymore. His goal wasn't to play a survival game. It was to find a settlement and escape this way of life. Though he feared parasites, he would eat fish raw if he had to. He just wanted to adventure and enjoy growing powerful. As if in response to this very thought, a notification materialized before his eyes. His level had increased to 3, and he had learned a new skill, Rush LV.1. His despair vanished, replaced by pure elation. This was what he had been waiting for. He eagerly examined the skill's details. Rush LV.1 allowed him to charge forward at 130% of his attribute speed, with a range of up to 5 meters. He immediately prepared to test it. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind, a traumatic memory of his failure with fire magic, and he reasoned that the skill likely wouldn't activate if he stood still. Pushing the thought aside, he decided to try it immediately, uttering the command, Rush. He decides to test the new skill while on the move. Uttering the command, Rush, he is suddenly propelled forward with startling velocity, his body a blur of motion. The abrupt acceleration catches him completely by surprise. The burst of speed leaves him breathless. He turns, his eyes wide with wonder and a grin spreading across his face. a profound realization dawns on him. This incredible power is what a true skill feels like. As the initial excitement subsides, he begins to analyze the ability. He observes that his magic power has been consumed, which seems to be the trigger, meaning he doesn't need to shout the skill's name to activate it. While its immediate combat applications seem limited, he recognizes its potential for launching a surprise attack, but notes there is one significant drawback. The drawback becomes clear as he looks at his discarded footwear on the ground. His shoes were torn clean off his feet by the sheer force of the acceleration. A wry smirk plays on his lips as he considers this new complication. After exhausting himself by repeatedly using his new rush skill, Yudo discovers a supreme resting place. It is a high ledge, inaccessible to goblins, with a nearby river and fruit trees. He settles down, relieved, recognizing that he can use this spot as a base of operations. Having found a moment of peace, he decides to take stock of his situation and opens his status screen to review his progress. He examines his stats at level 3, noting his intelligence and agility have increased. He calculates that if the max level is 99, his stats could reach around 300. His attention then shifts to his skills. He wonders when he acquired Fire Magic and Rush, realizing they're based on his intelligence and agility respectively, and that his base stats will directly affect his skill growth. His thoughts turn to skill acquisition. He questions if defeating the Horned Rabbits granted him a new skill, then reviews his estimations for various skill proficiencies like Gathering, Earth Magic, and Presence Detection. He speculates that defeating more monsters might increase the growth percentage of other skills, a prospect he finds highly beneficial. He considers that this world offers many skills for daily life, such as cooking, forging, and sword techniques. He concludes that the people native to this world likely learn skills that align with their chosen life paths and professions. This reminds him of a game he once played. It was a world where players could enjoy themselves however they wished, fishing, enjoying the scenery, or even finding romance. It was a game about more than just defeating monsters. However, his own path in that game was one of singular focus, the simple pursuit of power. For 6 years, he played relentlessly, achieving first place on all servers and earning the title God of Cessation. He reflects on the cost of that meaningless glory. Because of his obsession, he dropped out of college and was kicked out of his parents' house. Despite the real-world consequences, he admits to himself that it was the most enjoyable time of his life. A troubling realization dawns on him. This new world, with its systems of levels and skills, is dangerously suited to his tastes. He recognizes that this is bad, but the thought of it all, full status, max level, weapon completion, dungeon conquering, reminds him of that time. A powerful wave of excitement washes over him, and he covers his face, overwhelmed by the familiar, intoxicating thrill. He tried to temper his own excitement, reminding himself that he was an adult now and had moved past such obsessive behavior. He resolved not to sacrifice everything to immerse himself in this world as he had before. With that thought, he settled down to rest, hoping for at least one good dream before the new day began. Sometime later, sunlight streamed through the dense canopy of the forest, marking the start of his activities. He was now actively hunting, putting his pebble bait strategy into practice. A thrown stone lured a Moku from the ground, and as it emerged, he leaped forward to strike down a second one nearby. A notification confirmed his level had increased to 5. He clenched his fist, satisfied with the perfect execution. Leaning against a tree, he reviewed his progress. He mused that defeating barehanded goblins wasn't very profitable, and the one he'd seen with a stick must have been a rare variant. For now, hunting the mole-like creatures for their earth magic and presence detection experience points was the best path forward. He was no longer scared of them, having perfected his baiting technique. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the air. He froze, first wondering if it was a goblin or a new monster. But the realization hit him instantly. No, that was a human's voice. His mind raced. Was it a woman? A kid? Were they under attack? Decisive, he concluded that either way, he had to check it out, and broke into a sprint towards the sound. As he dashed through the undergrowth, a mole creature burst from the ground directly in his path. It hadn't noticed him yet. Annoyed, he yelled at it for being in the way and sent it flying with a powerful kick without breaking his stride. He pushed onward, a worrying thought occurring to him. If the mole appeared from the ground, could the people he heard be in a similar trap? Peering through the trees, he finally spotted them in a clearing ahead. There they are, he called out to himself. The sight was worse than he imagined. 2 terrified children, a boy and a girl, were running for their lives. In front of them, another boy, armed with a small blade, was desperately holding off 2 goblins. Mamiya was stunned. They were children, all 3 of them. The young fighter had been trying to avoid attacking more than one goblin at once, but the situation had grown more dire. To his shock, one of the creatures was now brandishing a sword. Seeing this, Yudo knew he had no choice. He refused to watch anyone die before his eyes and surged forward, rushing past the other 2 terrified children. He shouted a plan to the young combatant, offering to handle 2 of the goblins if the boy could take the last one. The boy reacted with surprise at the sudden arrival of an ally, while from a distance, the stocky child hoped this newcomer understood the gravity of the situation. The boy quickly agreed, and Mamiya, confident in their combined strength, confirmed the plan. They both charged, knowing that the first to move would seize victory. He led the charge, swinging his briefcase with savage force and roaring for the goblin to stay put. His attack missed its primary target but still drew blood. He grimaced, realizing there was still another foe to deal with. At the same time, the young boy was already engaged with his own opponent, having become accustomed to the deadly rhythm of combat. Pivoting from his missed-swing, Mamiya focused on the sword-wielding goblin, drawing back his arm for a powerful strike. His fist connected with a devastating impact, sending the creature flying backwards as its sword clattered uselessly to the ground. He winced from a fresh wound on his arm, but gritted his teeth, knowing he could endure it. Across the clearing, the young fighter now faced the last, wounded goblin. Mamiya stared, his expression a mixture of pain and disbelief. He was stunned that the young boy had managed to kill a goblin by himself. He watched as the young fighter prepared to strike the final goblin, which still hadn't noticed the boy's approach. A desperate realization struck Mamiya. At this rate, the boy would steal the kill, and with it, the precious experience. In a flash, a small blade flew through the air, embedding itself in the goblin's throat and felling the creature instantly. The young fighter froze in shock as blood sprayed past him. Mamiya, clutching the handle from which he'd launched the blade, offered a grim apology, explaining that he couldn't let the boy steal the kill. A quiet chime accompanied a new status update. His level had increased to 6. In this world, a familiar principle often governs conflict. The one who deals the final blow is the one who reaps the reward. This rule, common in role-playing games, dictates the flow of battle and the distribution of spoils. This very principle weighs on Mamiya Yudo's mind. He reflects on his greed, which drove him to steal the kill of a rare, sword-wielding goblin. He worries that the local boy he'd intended to help now hates him. A realization dawns on him. If he can gain experience here, then this world might operate on a complete game-like system. His concern, however, seems misplaced. He looks over to see the 3 young people. The spiky-haired boy, the heavy-set boy, and the young girl, all smiling warmly and chattering amongst themselves. It appears he doesn't have to worry about their resentment after all. Relieved, he tries to communicate, holding up a hand and asking them to wait, questioning if they understand him. Their only response is a series of blank, polite nods. The language barrier is absolute. He cannot understand a word they are saying. His frustration boils over. He mentally curses the acorn head god for granting him a language skill equivalent only to that of a 5-year-old, which prevents him from even reading or writing. Realizing he must improve it, he accesses his system menu to upgrade the otherworld language comprehension skill, attempting to compose himself in front of the children. He spends the points, but the result is infuriating. The skill only levels up to provide comprehension comparable to an 8-year-old. The meager 3-year increase sends him into a rage. His furious outburst startles the children, who recoil in fear. Immediately regretful, he apologizes for frightening them and resolves to spend even more points to increase the skill level again. After another upgrade, communication is finally possible. He thanks the girl for waiting and asks what happened before he arrived. She confirms that they couldn't understand him earlier. As he speaks, he internally groans, realizing he has just wasted all of his free points. Now able to converse, the group sits together. The heavy-set boy expresses his awe, asking how Yudo performed such a feat, something he's only ever seen done in a church while praying to the goddess. Yudo explains that he had simply forgotten the language for a moment, but can now understand them if they use simple words. Having broken the initial barrier, he leans forward and asks a practical question to learn more about his new companions. So, do you guys live here? In response to his question, the spiky-haired boy explains that they live in a nearby settlement called Bizarre Town. They had come to the woods searching for horned rabbits, but their expedition went awry when they encountered goblins. The young girl adds that the heavy-set boy, Pada, then broke the rules and fled deep into the woods. The children immediately begin to bicker. The girl, May, protests that she only ran because she thought the spiky-haired boy, Zink, could defeat their pursuers. Pada insists he didn't break any rules, merely running in a straight line as instructed. Zink retorts, questioning what he was supposed to do against a sword-wielding goblin besides run. As they argue, Yudo watches the rowdy bunch with a sense of detachment. His mind drifts. He's been desperately trying to ignore the constant threat of death, fumbling through this new reality without any survival experience. This world might have game-like elements, but one wrong move could be fatal. But now, in the presence of these children, his perspective begins to shift. He is snapped out of his thoughts by May's concerned shout. "Hey, are you okay?" she asks, her eyes wide. Startled, he manages a weak affirmation. A genuine smile then forms on his face. He confesses that he was lost, and that meeting them is a relief. His expression turns serious as he asks if they think they can make it back to Bizarre Town before sunset. Zink thoughtfully considers the question. Zink is hesitant. He believes they could move quickly, but Pada is in a poor state and would slow them down. The children agree that, at the very least, they could probably get out of the forest before the sun sets completely. Seeing an opportunity to help, Yudo declares they should leave immediately. He reveals he has a flashlight they can use after dark, which should ensure they reach the forest's edge in time. He also observes that Pada had been carrying a heavy basket. likely contributing to his exhaustion. He activates the device, casting a beam of light. The children stare in awe, shouting about how cool it is and asking if it's a magic item. Mei excitedly points out that his strange clothes and possession of such an item must mean he's an aristocrat. Flustered, Yudo urges them to stop talking, reminding them that they're short on time. Zinc takes the lead, pointing toward the path. He explains that he can see the Seer River, which gives him his bearings. Following the river would be a detour, so he proposes cutting through the forest instead and asks Yudo if he can lead. Holding his briefcase and the glowing flashlight, Yudo agrees. With the children leading the way into the forest, Zinc takes point, drawing a blade as he declares their expedition has begun. Mamiya Yudo follows behind the small group, his expression one of uncertainty. He holds up an ornate, jagged blade, explaining he will test its sharpness. Since they don't have the luxury to collect magic stones or monster parts, he asks Pada to lend him his sword. Yudo, meanwhile, is lost, pondering the terms body parts and magic stone. Zinc clarifies for Yudo that while magic stones can be found in this forest, they are small and not very valuable. He confirms that they do gather them to sell, but it's not a lucrative venture for beginners like them. Hearing Yudo's title, Mei-chan gasps, thinking corporate slave is an amazing name for someone who tends to wonderful creatures. Pada chimes in, assuming Yudo must be rich if he doesn't sell his magic stones. Yudo quickly corrects them, stating he is not a noble, but a lower-class corporate slave. He then asks if the three of them are a party. Mei-chan enthusiastically confirms this, explaining their roles. Zinc handles the hunting, she does the gathering, and Pada is responsible for carrying their haul. She then urges them to hurry up and get going. Yudo turns to Mei-chan, asking if she isn't afraid to be in a forest where monsters reside. She admits that it is scary, but the herbs and fruits they can find here are valuable and can be sold back in town. She elaborates that her family runs a pharmacy, and some people use magic to treat injuries. Since medicines for illnesses are expensive, she needs to do her best to gather items and earn money. Yudo is touched by her resolve, thinking she's amazing, before his attention is drawn to a struggling Pada. Mei-chan calls out to Pada, who is panting from exhaustion. She explains to Yudo that while Pada is used to physical labor from helping his family in the fields, he's struggling today. She adds that he plans to ask the goddess for language comprehension in his next prayer, causing Yudo to wonder if the boy even understood his earlier questions. Pada suddenly stops and looks up, asking if there's something in the tree. Zinc corrects him, stating the target is not above, but under the ground. As Yudo struggles to understand their concept of farming and praying for skill points, he hears a distinct thud from the earth. With his knife pointed at the ground, Zinc explains that huli moles are sensitive to sound. Tapping the ground like this will cause them to pop out if they're nearby. Yudo finally understands what kind of creature they are hunting. The young hunter's expertise prompts a comment from Yudo, who calls him well-informed. Zinc chuckles, explaining his father, a hunter, had taught him. When Yudo asks if he plans to go on adventures in the future, Zinc casually dismisses the idea, stating he would only go as far as the Rock Plains, as he is worried about Mei-chan and Pada. He adds, however, that even that limited journey is something for the distant future, as strong monsters are known to inhabit those plains. His expression then turns serious as he grips his sword, looking away. He explains that he needs to get stronger quickly to support his family, revealing that it is just him and his mother. Yudo processes this, reflecting on the harsh realities these children face. Zinc inheriting a dangerous job, Mei risking her life in the forest for money, and Pada sacrificing his studies to work in the fields. He realizes that these children are about the same age as his own de-aged body, and muses that such hardships must be normal in this world. It occurs to him that their assumptions about him being a noble might not be entirely wrong, given his different background. His train of thought is interrupted when Zinc turns back, suddenly realizing that they haven't properly introduced themselves to each other. Yudo agrees. With a calm smile, he apologizes for the late introduction and states his name is Loki. The name sends a shockwave through the children. Their eyes widen in disbelief as Zinc cries out, questioning if he is the demon Lord Loki. Internally, the man finds the name suits him well. The stunned question hangs in the air, echoing through the silent forest. Loki, the god of cessation. It is the name of the strongest player, a name widely known within the game he was once addicted to. This was the avatar name of Mamiya Yudo, who now finds himself at the start of a new chapter, the hero and the existence of the demon lord. Now in this new world, he stands beside the goddess and makes a firm decision. He will not reveal his origins from another world, nor will he show anyone the status screen given to him by the being he calls Acorn Head. He hadn't thought it necessary to use a fake name, but his own behavior gives him pause. He finds himself getting excited by his status increases and has become obsessed with delivering the final, crushing blow in every fight. This battle-hungry excitement has been a constant companion since his arrival. He recalls surveying the vast list of skills available and deciding that the name Loki would be perfectly suitable for him, a choice he celebrates with a triumphant roar upon learning a new fire magic skill. But now, with his arm bandaged from recent conflicts, a new thought strikes him. He cringes, realizing that the name he chose is actually incredibly embarrassing. His internal crisis is interrupted by a shocking question. Why is he being called a demon lord? He looks down at the children. Zinc declares that Loki isn't an aristocrat, but a demon lord. Mei-chan adds that his all-black attire is just like the demon lord from stories. A worried Pada asks if this means the demon lord from their tales doesn't actually exist. Loki turns to the goddess, a dreadful suspicion forming in his mind as she meets his gaze with a sly, knowing grin. He wonders if Acorn-head summoned him here, specifically to make him the new demon lord. He turns back to the children, asking Zinc about the story. Zinc retorts, questioning why Loki would dress the part if he wasn't the character. As another child tells Zinc to be quiet, Loki sighs, deciding he might be jumping to conclusions. He listened as Zinc, incredulous, questioned how he could be unaware of the story about the subjugation of the demon lord, especially given his all-black attire. The tale was an epic one. A fearsome demon lord, clad in blackness, who rose from the dark to rule over all monsters, opposed by a valiant hero who descended from the light, illuminating the world with a holy flash. As the group continued their journey, Loki processed this, realizing it was a well-known heroic tale in this world. The children then mentioned the hero's name was Takuya. The name gave Loki pause. They explained that Takuya wasn't a prince, but someone who had also come from a different world, appearing suddenly to defeat the demon lord. The realization struck Loki with force. It sounded exactly like the story of a cheaty otherworlder. His thoughts turned venomous, cursing the being he called Acorn-head for giving skills to others but not to him. The goddess, observing his mind, appeared confused by his sudden anger. Unaware of his inner turmoil, Mei-chan mused that her father had mentioned people from other worlds and that she hoped to meet one in the royal capital. She then pointed out to Pada that they already had. Zinc, however, cut her off, snapping that they didn't have the money to go there. The argument was cut short as a mole-like creature burst from the ground. Loki immediately took command, telling Pada and made a hide while he and Zinc handled the threat. As he prepared to fight, a feeling of satisfaction washed over him. The coordinated action reminded him of his past, observing players to find the most efficient strategies. He recalled a party that worked together seamlessly, each fulfilling their role, splitting rewards evenly, and genuinely enjoying their time together. Looking back at the children, he smiled faintly. The thought of having friends crossed his mind as he wondered what fate awaited him in this world. That quiet moment was shattered. The group was suddenly in a frantic retreat, shouting that they had managed to escape as Zinc carried Pada, and they all fled in terror. He and the children finally stopped running, panting with exhaustion and relief. Zinc declares that they should be safe now that they are out in the open, while Mei-chan cries, simply glad to be alive. Still catching his breath, Loki watches as Zinc offers to help Pada with the heavy basket he's carrying. Before the boy can hand it over, Loki steps in, taking the basket himself and thanking Zinc for the thought. Carrying the basket on his back, he follows the children over a rise, where a settlement comes into view against the evening sky. Zinc turns back with a bright smile, welcoming Loki to Bizarre Town and expressing his gratitude that Loki was with them. Their hurried pace alerts a guard at the town gate. The guard recognizes the children, Zinc, Pada, and Mei, and sternly asks what they were doing out so late. Standing before the group under the night sky, the guard's demeanor softens. He explains that he heard from Zinc how Loki had saved them, and he offers his sincere thanks. The guard then mentions hearing about a sword-wielding goblin. Loki, looking slightly embarrassed and sporting a few scratches, humbly replies that there's no need for such formality. He was also lost, so they were just scratching each other's backs. His attention falls on the weapon Loki is carrying. The guard inspects it, noting that it's a fairly new sword, in good shape with no rust. Zinc confirms that it is the very sword the goblin used. Impressed, the guard apologizes for holding them up, acknowledging that Loki must be exhausted. He declares Loki the children's savior and formally welcomes him into Bizarre Town as the gates swing open to a lively street. Once inside, Loki offers the goblin's sword to Zinc, stating that it belongs to him since he was saved. He adds that the sword is too long for him anyway. Zinc forcefully refuses, shouting that it wouldn't be fair and that he can't use it either. The guard steps in to quiet their argument. He tells them to continue their talk tomorrow when they meet again at the Hunters Guild. The unfamiliar term leaves Loki standing in silent confusion. He listened as the town guard explained the significance of the event, noting that it had been 5 years since a sword-wielding goblin was last seen. The guard stated his intention to report the matter to the guild master and requested Loki's presence. Loki acknowledged the request, and they agreed to meet at the guild the following day. As the guard departed, the children he had saved, Zinc, Pada, and Mei-chan, crowded around him, showering him with gratitude. They called him their savior, an aristocrat, and even a demon lord, their faces beaming. Waving goodbye, they promised to see him the next day before running off into the town. Once he was alone, a familiar interface materialized in his vision. It displayed an update to his abilities. His technique skill had increased by 1 point. His luck remained at 27, and the system confirmed he still possessed no divine protection or titles. He processed this information, realizing that he only gained skill experience from the creature he personally delivered the final blow to. The importance of last hitting became clear. As he watched the children disappear into the crowd, a grim determination settled over him. If he truly wanted to gain strength, he concluded he would have to abandon the idea of seeking friends. This new resolve was a bitter pill to swallow. He had been hoping to join a party, but now understood the inherent conflict. He couldn't possibly ask allies to let him deal the final blow to every monster. With a determined clench of his fist, he put the thought aside. He was finally in a town, and his first priority was to upgrade his tattered business suit. He began to walk through the bustling streets, taking in the sights and sounds of the lively market. He spotted the children again, excitedly pointing at a stall selling meat. While the vibrant energy of the town was a welcome change, his mind was focused on what he was truly seeking. His stomach rumbled, and he approached a nearby food stall, pointing to a skewer of grilled food and asking for one. The vendor cheerfully replied that it would be 400 beak. The unfamiliar currency name stopped him cold. "What's a beak?" he blurted out, his confusion evident. The question hung in the air for a moment before the horrifying truth crashed down on him. He had no local currency. He was completely broke. Deciding it didn't matter if he was 32 years old, he cast aside his pride. Spinning around, he cupped his hands to his mouth and yelled desperately down the street. "Zink-kun, Mai-chun, Botta-kun, please lend me some money." A commotion from below rouses Mamiya Yudo from his perch in a tree. He looks down to see the children he'd saved the previous day, pointing up at him. Realizing with a start that he is the cause of the noise, he reflects on how rough the last night had been. His difficult night was due to his inability to find a proper place to sleep or food to eat. He recalls how, after they all made it out of the forest, he had parted ways with the children. Just then, Mei-chan's voice calls out, announcing that she has finally found him after much searching. As she calls to him, Loki sits in the tree, lamenting his lack of money and resigning himself to the strange rules of this game-like world. Now on the ground, he learns from Mei-chan that she only realized he was penniless after they separated. She chides him for sleeping in a tree, explaining that's why she couldn't find him to offer a place to stay. With renewed purpose, she declares they are all going to the Hunters Guild and urges him to hurry. Upon entering the Hunters Guild, Loki is struck with awe at the vast, bustling hall. Mei-chan mentions that Pada is already eating, and Loki's eyes are drawn to the quest board, the tantalizing smell of food filling the air. His hunger takes over. He sees Pada enjoying a piece of meat and, with a face of pure desperation, declares how delicious it looks. He begs for a piece, promising to return the favor. He finally gets a taste. Having not eaten properly in 6 days, the flavor overwhelms him. He savors the juicy meat and the perfect blend of spices, recognizing it as the quintessential meal for someone in his isekai situation. As he eats, a confident woman with pointed ears approaches, addressing him as Loki-kun. She introduces herself as Almondan, notes his promising future, and informs him that the guildmaster is calling for him. Loki is shocked, wondering why such an important person would summon him. He obediently follows Almondan down a corridor. They stop before a large set of doors, and she announces their arrival to the master within. Inside, a stern, older man introduces himself as Yagov, the master of the Bees-Arts Hunters Guild. He apologizes for the sudden summons and extends his left hand for a handshake, a gesture that Loki finds peculiar. He firmly grasps the guild master's left hand and introduces himself simply as Loki. As they sit on opposite couches in a private room, Almondan places drinks on the table between them, playfully chiding Loki for sitting so close to her. The guild master, Yagov, ignores the lighthearted exchange and cuts directly to the chase, stating he has something he wants Loki to take. He reveals a generous pile of coins, explaining it is a token of appreciation from the mayor for saving the children. Loki, flustered, insists he only acted out of desperation but gratefully accepts the reward, admitting it will help greatly since he is currently penniless. Yagov adds his own thanks on the mayor's behalf. With the reward settled, Yagov extends a formal invitation for Loki to join their guild. Loki hesitates, admitting that while the work of a hunter seems to suit him, he doesn't plan to stay in this town for long and is therefore reluctant to join a formal organization. Seeing Loki's hesitation, Yagov clarifies that the Hunters Guild is an independent organization. He assures Loki that his registration would be valid in other countries as well. Internally, Loki re-evaluates the guildmaster, realizing that despite his powerful position, he is speaking seriously and not being forceful. He might be a good person after all. Yagov then reveals a startling observation. He notes that the language Loki speaks is different from any he knows, a distinction he can make by observing the movement of a person's mouth. He looks at Loki intently, remarking that he still has much to learn. Loki swallows hard, taken aback by the guildmaster's sharp perception. The guildmaster's focus then shifts to a more serious matter. He explains that 10 days prior, 2 local hunters went missing. They typically operated in the great forest of Palmyra. With his eyes narrowed, Yagov directly asks Loki what a non-hunter like him was doing in that same forest, requesting a detailed account. The direct question sends a jolt of panic through Loki. He instantly understands he is under suspicion. Reasoning that a bad lie would only make him look more guilty, he blurts out that he did not kill them, arguing that he wouldn't dare show his face in town if he were the culprit, but states he cannot reveal why he was there. He continues, however, to share what he witnessed. He tells the guildmaster that 3 or 4 days ago, he saw what looked like a human arm, which was then devoured by a goblin. Yagov listens intently to the grim report. He offers to help search for the remains of the missing hunters and return the sword he took from the goblin to their family. The guild master, Yagov, dismisses the offer, stating it's unnecessary as the couple had no close relatives. He then tells Loki he can keep the sword. Yagov continues, noting that the chances of finding them alive are slim and collecting their remains would be difficult. He apologizes, clarifying that he wasn't suspecting Loki of anything. With a thin smile, he reiterates his invitation for Loki to join the Hunters Guild, mentioning the registration desk will be open for noon, before bidding him farewell. Loki excuses himself and walks out, but pauses just outside the door, a cold sweat on his brow. He is deeply unsettled, wondering what that entire exchange was about. He puzzles over Yagov's words, questioning why the man would mention searching for remains, wondering if it was a calculated attempt to make him sympathize. The guild master's eyes remind him of his former company director, a man who was always smiling and treated the younger workers like an uncle. The realization strikes him. Both men hide their true intentions. He understands now that deep inside, their eyes are not smiling at all, making them impossible to read. Back inside the office, Amandan remarks to Yagov that Loki seemed perplexed for once. The guild master agrees, noting that the boy is too sharp for a kid. He speculates that Loki might be the same as those four, though he cannot be certain. Amandan then recalls the lost articles found 6 years ago, shoes, a watch, and a glass board, all of a peculiar, never-before-seen design. They were classified as National Secret Relics Second Legacy. She points out that Loki had a watch, and it was moving. Yagov realizes that Loki made no attempt to hide it, deducing his attention was entirely focused on clearing himself of the murder suspicion. Amandan confirms this is true. Based on this, Yagov instructs Amandan to watch Loki's every movement and keep him informed. He cautions her not to overstep, warning that it would be a disaster for the town to lose Loki if he were offended. Amandan accepts the task, assuring him she will handle it. Alone with his thoughts, Yagov stares out the window. He resolves to discover Loki's objective as soon as possible, finding it deeply mysterious that the boy would name himself after the Demon Lord. He looks out over the town, reflecting that there has been no remarkable development for a long time. He hopes Loki's existence can bring a big, positive change. As Loki walks away below, Yagov speaks aloud. Please be good to us, Loki. To survive in this new world, Mamiya Yudo understood that his path led to one place, the Hunters Guild. Despite the recent turmoil, being suspected as a killer and his own reservations about the guild's sketchy leader, he remained convinced that he could do great things here. His thoughts were interrupted as the children he saved ran up to him. Zink called out, asking how things went inside. In response, he triumphantly presented a large bag overflowing with coins, shouting for them to look at the large amount of money he received right from the start. The children stared in awe, mesmerized by the greatness and power of money. He explained to them that the 150,000 beak was a reward, a token of appreciation from the mayor for saving them. His pride was cut short by their reaction. They explained that if it had been an official emergency quest, he could have received around 100,000 beak for each person saved. Furthermore, the guild would have faced a penalty for not responding, though they quickly added that such a thing rarely happens. Loki processed this, as Zink elaborated that it was too soon for the guild to post an emergency quest, so the reward was likely from the citizens themselves. Zink stated that hunters are supposed to help people, not get helped, and would demand reimbursement. Loki privately noted that Zink seemed like a sketchy character himself, and his story was slightly different from what the guildmaster had said. Shaking it off, he cheerfully announced that since he had money, he would treat them all to skewered meat. Later, at the registration desk, he was greeted by the receptionist, Amandan. Pleased that he remembered her name, she formally introduced herself as the guild's third highest receptionist. She expressed a fondness for him and offered to take him under her care, a prospect Loki considered potentially beneficial. She then instructed him to write his name and age on the registration form. He picked up the quill, pausing over the paper. He thought about his name. He knew that if he wrote Loki here, there would be no turning back from this new life. As he hesitated, Amandan mentioned that the registration card would take a moment and offered to explain the guild rules. She asked if he knew how to write. He thought so, but with a grimace of frustration, he resolved to just get it done. Within the Hunters Guild, the nature of quests varies greatly. While many entry-level tasks involve simple chores or assisting with others' jobs, the core purpose remains clear. For those like Zink, the guild is fundamentally a place for subjugation quests. However, access to such quests is governed by a strict hierarchy. The guild master, Yagov, clarifies the system. 8 ranks in total, from G to S. A hunter may only accept quests at their rank or lower, with one exception. With the guild master's permission, they can undertake a quest 1 rank higher. Zink is told he should qualify for this, having already defeated a sword goblin. Loki, absorbing this new information, asks about the promotion process. Amandan explains that to advance, one must contribute to the guild and prove their abilities. While a practical exam is required for B rank, reaching the prestigious S rank necessitates an interview with the Grand Master at the guild headquarters. He understands. It is a system of meritocracy. The realization brings a determined smile to his face. As long as he increases his level and works hard, he will receive appropriate rewards. It is a world away from his old life, where hard work only ever resulted in more work being piled upon him. His thoughts are interrupted as Amandan presents him with his newly created guild card. She hands it over, acknowledging the risks he will face in his new life. He takes the card, officially becoming newbie hunter Loki. Amandan expresses her anticipation for his future achievements and reveals that the guild master himself asked her to look after him, knowing he is new to the town. Loki is taken aback, surprised that the master would show him such consideration. Eager to begin, he immediately asks Amandan for a recommendation on a good hunting spot, admitting he has many questions. His forwardness seems to charm her. In response, she pulls out a map. For someone looking to rank up quickly, she suggests the Rocco Plains or Lulu Forest. She then points to the Great Forest Palmyra, advising that for lower ranks, it's best to stick to the first layer, a place few people venture. The name is familiar. Loki recalls Zinc mentioning it before. Amandan confirms that the shallow area of the forest contains only F-rank monsters like horned rabbits and goblins. However, she adds that the deeper one goes, the more mysteries they will find. Intrigued by an area unknown even to locals, Loki asks for more details. She explains that the Great Forest Palmyra is immense, covering a quarter of the continent. The first layer, meant for beginners, is unpopular due to troublesome creatures called huli moles. According to guild records, it takes 60 days just to reach the second layer, and the strength of monsters is standardized for each subsequent level. A legend even claims the Birdman tribe once reached the 5th layer. The sheer scale of the place leaves Loki in awe. He likens the Great Forest Palmyra to a final dungeon near a starter village in a video game, a concept he finds appealing. He then poses another question to Amandan. Even if lower-ranked hunters can't take higher-ranked quests, can they still hunt the monsters? Amandan, her expression souring, confirms that they can, but they simply won't receive the official subjugation reward. Upon hearing this, Loki's eyes light up with excitement. He declares that it's fine as long as there's no penalty. Seeing his reaction, Amandan's gaze narrows with suspicion. She asks directly if he intends to venture into the deeper layers of the Great Forest Palmyra. He claims he's just setting the place as a goal for now, but his eager expression tells a different story. Amandan sternly reminds him that recklessness is not a virtue for hunters. She hopes he now understands the reason the guild doesn't offer benefits for out-of-rank subjugations. It's a measure to protect its members. Visibly tired from his endless questioning, she sighs and tells him that if he wants to know more, he should consult the books in the document room. With a menacing smile, she adds a stark warning. The books are incredibly valuable and heavily guarded. If he were to accidentally tear a page, he might become a slave for eternity. The threat lands with full force. A terrified Loki stammers that he will be extremely careful, thanking her for the information. Walking away from the counter, he breathes a sigh of relief, thinking it was a close call and that he's glad he didn't bring a written list of questions. He glances at notice board, observing that even the paper used there seems valuable, reinforcing Amandan's warning in his mind. As he heads for the exit, a cheerful voice calls his name. It's Zinc, who excitedly asks if Loki has finished his registration. Both young men proudly show each other their new guild cards, sharing a smile. Zinc immediately lays out their next move. He's going to sell a sword they acquired and invites Loki along. He also reports that while waiting, they sold their other materials for 22,000 beak, which they'll split evenly for 5,500 each. Loki, impressed by the quick calculation, agrees to accompany him. The group walks together through the town streets. Loki, unfamiliar with the area, asks where the weapon shop is. Zinc points ahead, indicating that it's right over there. Inside the shop, a burly blacksmith examines their sword. While Zinc explains to the others that they need to split the money 4 ways, Loki steps forward and earnestly pleads with the blacksmith for a price of 80,000 beak. The blacksmith gruffly shuts him down with a firm counteroffer, 50,000 beak. He listens as the blacksmith, arms crossed defensively, insists that he is running a business and cannot afford to lose money on the trade. The smith makes a firm counteroffer of 40,000 beak, calculating how it would be split between the 4 of them. Unfazed by the low offer, he probes further, asking if the blacksmith intends to sell the second-hand sword in the outside marketplace. The smith confirms this is his plan. He then presents his argument. In the outside marketplace, a sword of this quality is valued at 100,000 beak, meaning the smith could easily mark it up for a substantial profit. The blacksmith, growing frustrated, throws out a higher number, 60,000 beak, but complains that he won't see any profit until the sword is sold. He presses his advantage, reminding the smith that even the gatekeeper had noted the sword's high quality. He then reveals a critical detail. The sword was purchased from this very shop only 10 days prior. He asks if the blacksmith recalls the sale, implying he knows full well that the weapon will sell quickly. The blacksmith groans, visibly cornered by the flawless logic. Sensing the negotiation is at its tipping point, Loki names his price, 72,000 beak. He adds with a smirk that if they can't make a deal, he'll just give the sword to Pata, who looks on with a restless expression. Defeated, the smith throws his hands up and concedes. You win, he declares, agreeing to buy the sword for 72,000 beak. Behind Loki, the 3 children erupt in celebration. While the blacksmith exasperatedly shouts that he should have just named his price from the beginning, Loki is already moving on to the next transaction. With a feigned, innocent sparkle in his eyes, he produces a small knife, inquiring about its value and preparing for another round of bargaining. Now equipped for his new life, Loki assesses his purchases. 2 sets of used commoner's clothes, sturdy boots, and a beginner's weapon. The total cost is significant, but he has what he needs. He makes a silent promise to himself to repay the shop's kindness by purchasing from them again without haggling. Following his acquisitions, he secures lodging for 3,000 beak a night. Lying on the simple bed, he reflects with satisfaction that things are finally moving forward. He then ventures out, absorbing the local customs. He learns that the ringing of a bell marks the time. Magic stones are used to fuel lamps, and that written information is often on wooden boards due to the preciousness of paper. With this new knowledge, he grows excited for what's to come, but realizing it's already noon, he decides it's time to go. His path leads him back to the guild, where he finds Almondan. She greets him warmly as Loki-kun, complimenting his new, lovely look. He thanks her, ready to inquire about the matters he had previously asked her for. Her friendly demeanor shatters in an instant. She leans in, her voice sharp and loud, reminding him that he is still a newbie and absolutely must form a party. She reveals she even secured special permission for him to take on an F-rank quest. Startled by her intensity, Loki can only stammer that he will do his best. He considers her forceful advice. He understands the logic. Dividing roles among a party for hunting, gathering, and carrying supplies makes any task easier. However, he internally concludes that despite the ease, there is no real merit in it for him. His conviction solidifies. He feels he can explore the great Palmera forest alone. Right now, his need for money outweighs all else, and he has no desire to share experience or rewards. While he recognizes that ignoring efficient leveling might be a poor long-term strategy, it's a sacrifice he's willing to make for immediate gain. With his mind made up, he heads for the town gate. The gatekeeper spots him, remarking that he has officially become a hunter. Loki admits that he feels bad for Almondan, but confirms to the guard that he is undertaking this quest alone. The gatekeeper, however, doesn't argue. Instead, he offers a friendly, parting warning. Be sure to return before nightfall. Heeding the warning, Loki waves back with a confident shout of course. As he walks away from the town, he realizes with a small smile that people like the guard and Almondan are already worrying about him. He ventures into the first layer of the great Palmera forest, cautiously peering from behind a tree as he begins his solitary hunt. He weighs his options for the hunt. Since he is working alone, farming magic stones seems like a practical choice as they are light and easy to carry. From a monetary perspective, hunting horned rabbits is more efficient, with their pelts and other parts fetching around 5,000 beak. However, a goblin yields a 1,000 beak subjugation reward and a 1,500 beak magic stone, making it a viable alternative. As he considers this, a rustling in the bushes catches his attention. A horned rabbit appears. He decides that for today, he will simply test his new abilities. The creature lunges, but Loki finds he can perceive its movements with newfound clarity due to his increased level. Realizing the status blessing is even better than he'd thought, he dodges and counters with a decisive slash, felling the beast. His success continues as he spots and engages a goblin. He thinks that with his current strength, he can defeat one without needing a flashlight. After striking it down, a wave of exhilaration washes over him. He likens the feeling to the satisfying moment of a character's growth in a game. Energized by his victories, he raises his blade, vowing to hunt many more. But the initial adrenaline rush quickly fades. A short while later, he kneels beside the goblin's corpse, panting from exhaustion as the grim reality of his actions sets in. His face contorts as a wave of nausea overcomes him, sweat beading on his brow. The feeling worsens as he begins the gruesome task of harvesting the proof of kill. He finds the smell and texture repulsive, making him feel sick. The process is tough and grotesque, and he realizes his clumsy efforts, based only on a memory of a science class video, are making it even more horrific. At last, his blood-soaked hand retrieves a magic stone from the creature's body. He knows all that's left is to take the hand as proof of subjugation. Gritting his teeth, he reflects on how much time and effort a single goblin required. He steels himself and continues the grim work, inserting his blade along a joint. He kneels by the river, the water turning black as he scrubs the gore from his hands. The reality of his situation crashes down on him. He realizes that going solo isn't more efficient, it's just foolish. He berates himself for ignoring others' concerns and for not even considering how to clean himself after the kill. His frustration boils over into anger at his own naivete. He thinks he's getting in over his head, underestimating the life and death stakes of this world. Cursing, he resolves that being angry at himself is pointless. He must show his guts and achieve his goal for the day, starting with wiping enough blood from his knife so he can hold it properly. After returning to the guild, he presents his haul to Almondan. She looks into his basket, impressed, remarking that it's amazing to gather so much on a first hunt. She adds that she supposes he didn't defeat a sword-wielding goblin for nothing. Her gaze then lifts from the basket to Loki himself. Her eyes narrow slightly as she takes in his state, utterly exhausted, splattered with blood and grime, and shifting awkwardly under her scrutiny. Her admiration vanishes replaced by stern concern. As she begins to ask about his equipment, a nearby hunter, Zink, erupts. He shouts at Loki, asking if he went out alone, without a party, without even bringing water. He demands to know if Loki has a death wish. Faced with a barrage, Loki can only stand silently, having nothing to say. Amandan continues the scolding, pointing an authoritative finger at Loki, who flinches back. She commands him to go wash his hands first before anything else. He walks away from the counter, feeling like a child who has just been scolded. As he processes the embarrassment, a woman from a nearby tavern calls out to him. Noting that his hands are now clean, she kindly offers him something to wipe his exhaustion away. She understands and brings him a tall glass filled with ice water. He stares into it, lost in thought. Seeing his distant expression, the tavern keeper gently asks if something is on his mind, but he quickly dismisses her concern, saying it's nothing. He sits alone at his table, the cold glass in his hand, as the life of the tavern buzzes around him. Patrons eat, drink, and laugh, but Loki is isolated in his own world, quietly contemplating the brutal realities of his new life. He sat in the tavern, observing the other patrons. His eyes landed on a man wearing glasses, a detail that sparked a thought. He recalled hearing that this type of eyewear had only been around for 20 or 30 years in this world. He admitted to himself that he wasn't well informed about this world's history, but the conclusion was logical. Since this was not Earth, it made perfect sense that they would develop technology along a different path. He dismissed the line of thought, deciding it wasn't his concern as he wasn't a scientist. He just needed to focus on the tasks in front of him. Taking a sip from his glass, he savored the simple deliciousness of the water. Yet his mind drifted again, pondering the idea of transmigrators like himself and a hero named Takuya bringing Earth's culture into this new world, perhaps even revolutionizing it. Meanwhile, at the guild hall, Amandan approached a burly man at a processing counter. She presented a bucket, explaining that its contents were from the new hunter. She instructed the man, Rhodey, to please process the items. Rhodey remarked that the boy, Loki, wasn't bad, having extracted the magic stone quite well for a first-timer. Amandan playfully called him rude for his bluntness. Rhodey then stated that if the new hunter works to earn money, the guild profits as well, so they need him to work hard. As they spoke, Loki sat in the tavern, his own thoughts turning to finance. His target, he resolved, was a short sword priced at 550,000 beak. Loki studies a book detailing the local fauna. The first section covers the Great Palmyra Forest, identifying its inhabitants as horned rabbits, goblins, and huli moles. The guide continues, describing the F-rank monsters of the Rocco Plains. It notes that while they look tough, a countermeasure might be needed against the poison mice, which can use wind magic and poison attacks. Another section details the Lulu Forest, home to small wolves that hunt in packs, giant orcs, and rig spiders capable of spewing sticky thread. The book recommends a rank of E for this area, noting that Loki is still too weak to face them. He leans back, absorbing the information about the monsters near Bizarre Town. He laments the lack of recommended levels, which would simplify his decisions. He realizes that unlike in a game, he can't just explore recklessly. The immediate problem is deciding when to change hunting spots, as the combat in Palmyra seems easy enough if he ignores the difficulty of butchering the creatures. His intense focus is broken by a voice calling his name. Rhodey announces that he has finished calculating his earnings. Rhodey cheerfully reveals the total, 48,500 beak. He praises Loki, noting that earning nearly 50,000 in half a day is impressive. When Loki asks if rewards depend on material quality, Rhodey confirms, explaining a 5-tier system from E to A. He adds that all the horn rabbit materials Loki brought were valued at a solid B rank. The processor offers some friendly advice, telling him to work hard but also rest. From the doorway, Amandan watches them. Ignoring the advice, Loki eagerly asks for pointers on how to maintain the quality of his materials. His mind, however, is already racing. He can't sit idly by. He is consumed by the goal of earning 100,000 beak a day. To do that, he needs to hunt more efficiently, find a better hunting spot, and acquire proper equipment. He feels utterly inefficient. A familiar voice cuts through his frantic thoughts. Amandan has approached, reminding him of her offer to teach him the basics of hunting. Startled, Loki mutters that he needs to go shopping for essentials. With a knowing smile, she agrees, cautioning him not to be reckless. Before he can fully respond, she holds out her hand. Also, I forgot to give you this before, she says, presenting him with a small, sparkling object. He examines the small, sparkling item Amandan gave him, realizing it's a church coin. With this, he could check his status. Though he doesn't feel a pressing need, he admits to a curiosity about how people in this world perform the check. Just then, a young boy, Zink, approaches and asks if he has finished hunting for the day. Turning to face the boy and his friends, Loki listens as Zink mentions he was on his way to go shopping. Loki simply affirms that he understands. He explains to the children that it has been nearly 2 years since he last checked his status and was considering doing so. Holding out the silver coin, he offers it to Zink, stating it would be a waste for him to keep it. Zink expresses surprise, feeling hesitant to accept it for free. As a trade, Loki asks if they could tell him about the process for checking one's status in Bizarre. He admits he's just curious if it's different there. though he internally worries his excuse sounds flimsy. Zinc seems slightly baffled by the question, explaining that the process is the same everywhere. A series of letters appears on a black slate, displaying one's learned skills and their levels. Loki nods, indicating he understands. Before Zinc can continue, the young girl, Mei-chan, excitedly lists her own skills: languages comprehension, gathering, and herbalist. Her sudden revelation causes Loki to cry out in alarm, telling her to wait. He asks if there are no numbers involved, which confuses Mei-chan. Zinc quickly intervenes, advising Loki that one should not reveal their skills so openly in public. He shares a warning from his father: those with rare skills risk being kidnapped and enslaved. The gravity of this information silences Mei-chan, and Loki agrees to keep his own abilities a secret. Their discussion is cut short by a stern voice shouting at them for disturbing the peace in front of the church. A nun, whom Zinc identifies as Mirai-san, approaches. She doesn't recognize Loki. Zinc quickly apologizes and introduces Loki as a strong new hunter, explaining that he was just teaching him about checking one's status. Upon hearing the explanation, Mirai-san's demeanor softens. She praises Loki for being well-mannered and tells him he has a promising future. Loki reflexively puts on his old business smile, thanking her profusely and vowing to do his best hunting monsters. The nun reminds him that the goddess is always watching his conduct. With a warm, encouraging smile, she imparts one final piece of wisdom. He must always remember to follow the path of virtue, so that he may be bestowed a good blessing by the goddess. She explains that while she understands his point about gaining experience through daily tasks, hunting monsters remains the most efficient way for him to obtain new skills. Loki internally scoffs at the idea that the being he calls Acorn-head is a goddess who watches his daily conduct, prompting a mental image of an annoyed deity. As the children wave and shout their goodbyes, Loki waves back. Zinc announces he's going shopping and will return for dinner, a claim Loki silently questions. He returns to his lodging alone, letting out a weary sigh as he sits at the table. Seeing his meal, he feels a sense of relief that dinner is fish, admitting to himself that he couldn't stomach meat for a while. His aversion is rooted in the grim reality of the hunt. He had spoken of it casually, like a game, but the memory of bleeding monsters and the sickening smell of their corpses is still vivid. It was the act of killing a living being. Gazing at the black slate on the table, he accepts that this world is undeniably real. He thinks of Acorn-head, finally understanding her words about the handmade slate being something to be grateful for as it chimes softly. The nun's belief that accumulating virtue was just a way to gain experience flashes through his mind. He recalls her elation upon seeing the notifications on his slate: level ups, status increases, and newly learned skills. He now understands why other adventurers are not obsessed with landing the final blow. He had thought it was an unwritten rule, but the truth is they simply don't need to hunt to make a living. The full realization strikes him as he remembers the others gathered around his status slate. It was blank. They simply don't know about the detailed feedback system. His own slate, however, is different. It shows not only learned skills like languages comprehension with a progress bar, but also unlearned skills like animal languages comprehension. He can see these skills and attempt to learn them, a capability no one else seems to possess. He connects the pieces. What others call a status check is just a confirmation of their skills. They can't see their level or status values. He, however, can see all those numbers. He concludes with certainty. This is a cheat skill. He reflects on his detached perspective, concluding that this is precisely why he cannot help but treat this new reality like a game. This mindset leads him to admit, internally, that he ignores the concerns others have for him. He even fears he might use the children, Zinc, Pata, and Mei-chan, for his own benefit. The reason for this cold calculation is the stark difference from his previous life. In this world, effort genuinely leads to greater strength, a concept he would have never even considered back home. He remembers the powerlessness of his past and does not want to experience that again, a feeling that has driven his unrestrained pursuit of strength. This internal turmoil culminates in a desperate plea. He calls out to the entity he knows as Acorn-head, begging to be returned to his original world, convinced that at this rate, he will become corrupted. His words are met with absolute silence. The light seems to extinguish, leaving only pitch blackness and a pair of unblinking eyes staring back at him from the void. The lack of response sends his thoughts spiraling. He recalls learning of a demon lord Loki, a being stained by darkness, and realizes his own personality is ill-suited to being a hero. A dark notion takes root. Perhaps he should just become the demon lord and conquer the world. Frustration boils over. He clenches his fist, annoyed that Acorn-head remains silent. Unsure why he was summoned, but abandoned now, he makes a new resolution. He will do whatever he wants and live for his own sake. Yet, as he gazes out the window, his resolve is immediately tested. A question lingers. Should he tell Zinc and the others the truth? Despite his decision, his thoughts still drift to them. Loki awakens with a groan, every muscle protesting. His body feels heavy, and his feet ache with a sharp, throbbing pain from his recent exertions. He realizes with dawning frustration that he had been too reckless, pushing the limits of what a 14-year-old's body could handle. Sitting alone, he reflects on his predicament. Since being sent to this new world, there's been no contact from Acorn Head. Without any specific orders, he decided to act on his own, but immediately stumbled upon a significant problem. The problem was his physical conditioning. His status showed no value for stamina, leaving him with no choice but to train the old-fashioned way. For the past 3 days, he has been forcing himself to jog to build up his endurance. During one such training run, he spots a familiar and distressing sight: children being attacked again. Without a second thought, he changes course, shouting that he will save them. His intervention is successful. The 2 children, Pada and Mei-chan, are unharmed and express their profuse thanks for his help. He approaches them, asking if they are all right. The situation reminds him of a comment made by a town guard during a similar incident, remarking on someone's guts, but warning Loki that his body wouldn't hold up if he kept getting into such surprising fights. Later, at the guild's processing counter, Loki reports that he has met his quota for the day. The processor, Rhodey, notes that the rumors about his talent are true, given his consistent game, but also observes that he seems burned out and finished unusually early. Rhodey asks if he's saving to buy something. Internally, Loki is conflicted. He honestly doesn't want to stand out or have rumors spread about him, as it brings trouble, but he can't afford to reduce his income. Despite his desire to remain inconspicuous, he has a clear and expensive goal. He needs to earn around 1.5 million beak for weapons, armor, and other supplies because he intends to go to the Raucous Plains. He listened as the guild processor, Rhodey, explained his predicament while serving up a bowl of horn rabbit stew. Rhodey noted that he rarely sees anyone with a full basket, as most people in town who call themselves hunters are just selling materials as a side hustle. He bluntly told Loki that he should give up on trying not to stand out. The advice made Loki realize why Amondan had looked at him with such a peculiar expression earlier. He considered this as Rhodey continued. The man explained that by consistently delivering monster materials every day, Loki would inevitably stand out, but that this would also lead to him being more valued by the guild. Rhodey added that it's also more profitable to sell monster parts, other than the subjugation proofs, at a specialty store. The processor then voiced a concern, having noticed that Loki always carries his gold coin rewards with him. He informed Loki that the guild offers a service to keep his gold coins safe. Loki understood that this service was likely connected to rank increases and resigned himself to the fact that his growing reputation was unavoidable. The advice solidified a new resolve within him. Looking towards a particular destination, he felt a surge of determination. He knew what he wanted. His determination was immediately followed by a wave of anxiety. He thought about the 1.5 million beak he needed to accumulate and the danger of being robbed, annoyed that Amondan hadn't warned him about such a crucial detail. A quick check of his status revealed his money was at 0, making him wonder if the system was bugged. He walked through the town, his attention caught by a person exiting a particular building. It appeared to be a jewelry store. Lost in thought, he stumbled and bumped into a passerby, quickly apologizing for his lack of attention. Having identified his destination, he stepped through the ornate doorway. A calm, welcoming voice greeted him from within the lavishly decorated shop. He stood before the counter, where a mysterious woman asked if he was there to buy or sell magic stones. Loki stared in astonishment at the glittering gems displayed in cases all around him. He couldn't believe they were all magic stones, wondering internally what else they could possibly be. The shopkeeper offered to tell him about them. Loki, suddenly looking as earnest as a young student, readily accepted. The woman noted his unfamiliarity, pointing out the many different colors and asking if he was truly new to the world of magic stones. She began her lesson with a wide, knowing smile. She explained that the stones have many colors because a magic stone's attribute changes depending on its color. She gave examples, stating that black signifies a null attribute and red a fire attribute. She finished by saying she assumed he had at least seen a black-colored magic stone before. She continues her explanation, noting that null attribute stones are sufficient for daily life before posing a question to Loki. What purpose, then, does a large, vibrantly colored magic stone serve? The implication hangs in the air, and Loki's eyes widen as a realization begins to dawn. He understands. He's seen this before, and the existence of attribute magic stones confirms his suspicion. A vision flashes through his mind of a warrior enchanting their blade. The possibility excites him. He could wield 2 swords, each imbued with a different element. The shopkeeper confirms his thoughts, explaining that magic stones can be used to enchant equipment. However, she tempers his excitement, noting that such stones are probably too expensive for a beginner with only a knife. She mentions a weapon shop in Bazaar with the enchant skill, amused that he had imagined it. To prove her point, she reveals a small, gleaming stone in a display case. Loki recoils in shock at the price, 50,000 beak. He mentally calculates that a Holy Mole's magic stone is only worth 2,000 beak in comparison. Addressing him as future Hunter Cohen, the shopkeeper tells him he can return when he has more money. She adds that earth attribute stones are unpopular and thus cheaper, as their use is limited to construction, unlike the more versatile fire or ice stones. Loki considers this, finding the logic sound. He sighs, realizing he now needs a lot of money for basic equipment, and on top of that, attribute weapons. The new possibilities broaden his horizons, filling his mind with images of powerful magic. With his head spinning, he decides it's time for dinner. His thoughts of food conjure a bizarre, celebratory daydream. He sees himself dressed in fine robes, hands pressed together in gratitude, surrounded by a troupe of dancing women before an ornate, elephant-adorned building. Snapping back to reality, he is walking down a street when an intoxicating smell captures his full attention. He follows the aroma, his eyes locking onto a nearby building, wondering if that is the source. He enters to find a man in a turban ladling a fragrant stew. The man asks if Loki knows a curry, and Loki eagerly confirms. The chef explains his menu is only curry, an ultimate dish of spices for 9,000 beak, and questions if Loki has the resolve to even sit down. Though he recognizes the exorbitant price, his body has already made the decision. Overcome by the aroma, he slams his hands on the counter, demanding a plate and insisting that he will pay. He stares down at the bowl, his eyes wide with disbelief and recognition. There's no mistaking it, it's curry. The turbaned chef smiles, approving of his customer's choice. Well said, the chef proclaims. As he takes his first bite, a wave of nostalgia washes over him, reminding him of the curry he often ate for lunch back at his office. The chef wishes him bon appetit, but the familiar moment is shattered by an intense, searing heat. It's too spicy, it hurts. Yet, as the initial shock subsides, he perceives a deep, delicious taste hidden behind the spiciness. The deliciousness overwhelms him. He finds he can't stop eating, shoveling spoonful after spoonful with pure delight. With a blissful, flushed expression, he puts his hands together and shouts his thanks for the meal before eagerly finishing his plate. As he leaves the restaurant, the financial reality of his indulgence sinks in. He just spent 9,000 beak on one meal, immediately after deciding he needed to save 1.5 million. Despite the cost, he offers a sincere thank you very much to the chef on his way out. He walks away with a spring in his step, deciding that the meal was so delicious the cost was fine. As the chef waves him off, a thought strikes him. The taste was so intensely familiar. Could it be that there are other people here who also came from Earth? Loki finishes a meal, licking his lips with satisfaction. He has just eaten curry, an ultimate dish of abundant spices, and found it delicious. However, he notes the exorbitant price of 9,000 beak for a single portion, deciding he will only eat it again as a special reward. He makes a mental note to be more careful about entering stores so carelessly in the future. As he steps outside, a woman with pointed ears and a man greet him. The woman, recognizing him, introduces herself as Mei-chan's mother and the man as her father, thanking Loki for taking care of their daughter. Loki is surprised to meet them, realizing he is standing in front of a pharmacy. The mother, Amandan, adds that she is often in the forest and feels she may have seen him somewhere before. Before the conversation can proceed, Mei-chan herself appears, her face alight with pure excitement. She shouts Loki's name and joyfully invites him to come play by the river with her the next day. She rushes toward him, promising it will be fun and that she will also invite Pada and Zink. She excitedly describes how great the water feels and that they can even catch fish there, leaving Loki momentarily stunned by her energetic proposal. As Mei-chan dashes away as quickly as she appeared, her mother apologizes for her daughter's whirlwind personality. Loki watches her go with a slightly bewildered expression. He turns back to her parents, thinking that going with the 3 children would likely be fun, even though he had wanted to go hunting. He begins to politely decline, but Amandan asks if he could accompany Mei-chan, as she still often goes to the river to fish. Her husband chimes in, remarking how nice it is to play by the river, just as he did as a child. Faced with their earnest request, Loki finds he cannot refuse. He smiles, a happy realization dawning on him. He is being relied upon. He wonders if it's because he's saved them before. Feeling pleased, he thanks them and assures them the children will be safe with him. His thoughts then drift to Zink. He acknowledges that while he possesses a special skill that lets him view his own status, it doesn't make him invincible. In his mind, Zink is far stronger and more reliable. As he muses, Amandan gets his attention, reassuring him that with her around, everything will be fine. She then remembers something, saying, "Oh, right," and presents him with a small, corked glass bottle filled with tiny, dark pellets. Loki looks at the object in her hand, confused, and asks what it is. She explains that it's a medicine to help ease muscle pain and recover from fatigue, which must be tough from running around every day. Stunned by the offer, Loki asks if she's really giving it to him and how much it costs. Amandan smiles warmly, telling him not to pay. He should take it as a thank you for saving her daughter from the goblins. He tried to insist on paying for the medicine, but Amandan gently refused, explaining it was just a leftover and she couldn't accept a large sum. Seeing her expression become troubled, he worried for a moment that she might have given him a simple placebo. Unwilling to accept the gift for free, he declared that he would pay. His mind raced, connecting the dots. The curry he'd eaten was expensive. If this medicine was also costly, it might contain precious herbs. He realized the reluctance might be because of its high value, not because it was worthless. A wave of excitement washed over him as he considered the medicine's potential potency. With this new understanding, he cheerfully thanked Amandan for the medicine, promising to return and buy more if it proved effective. As an afterthought, he also inquired if she sold any remedies for stomach pain. As he concluded his business, he saw the children waiting for him in the distance. Zink spotted him and waved, calling out that he was there. He walked over to join them, and an energetic Mei-chan, noticing he had also purchased a fishing rod, urged everyone to hurry up and head out. Loki quietly mentioned to the others that he had bought the cheapest rod he could find, hoping it would be sufficient. With their group assembled, they began their journey toward a distant watchtower. Loki wondered aloud how long the walk would take. Zink instructed him to place his gear in Pata's large basket, explaining that he and Loki would scout their surroundings as a precaution while they traveled. The path took them through a dense, wild forest, a clear sign of the untamed nature of this world. Loki was stunned when Zink casually estimated the journey would take about 2 hours. The idea of walking for 2 hours just to go play was completely foreign to him. After the long trek, they finally arrived at the river. Loki let out a great sigh of relief as he saw Mei-chan already by the water's edge. Zink suggested they have lunch, but Loki had to admit that despite his efforts, he still hadn't caught a single fish. Despite his lack of success, he sat back on the riverbank, taking in the view. As Zink and Pata fished nearby, he found himself relaxing, appreciating the peaceful and calming scenery. His peaceful reflection was soon interrupted by Zink, who teased him for being bad at fishing, clarifying that Mei-chan's skill was a special case. Before Loki could feel too discouraged, Pata kindly offered to share his catch. Mei-chan then cheerfully announced that she had brought a lunchbox from her mother for everyone to share. He presents a small, box-like device to the children, explaining it's a magic tool for igniting fire. Loki points out its features: a fuel tank, a banner cap, a switch, and a slot for a magic stone, comparing it to something from his own world. Zink and Mei-chan are amazed, noting that their mother had prepared a lot of things for their trip. Loki offers to teach them how to use it, as they seem unfamiliar with the object. As he activates the switch, the tool bursts to life with a small, controlled flame, startling both Zink and Mei-chan, who watch with wide-eyed wonder. With the campfire now lit, Loki uses the magic tool to expertly grill the fish. Amandan watches him with a smirk, remarking that she can't tell if he's truly knowledgeable or just faking it well. Holding the convenient device, Loki excitedly declares that they'll eat grilled fish, marveling at how easy it would be to make fire if he owned such a tool. The group settles down to eat, and Loki lets out a sigh of pure bliss. He points out some insects that were also cooked, assuring everyone they're also delicious with salt. Pata takes a bite and confirms it. The smoke from their pleasant meal drifts up into the sky. After the satisfying meal, the children are re-energized. Mei-chan exclaims that she wants to eat more, and Zink proposes a team battle to catch more food as a way to digest their lunch. The group agrees, and Loki asks how they should divide the teams. He then suggests a convenient game he calls rock, paper, scissors to decide the teams, flashing a scissors hand sign with a confident grin. The teams are set, Loki with Pata, and Zink with Mei-chan. Zink declares he won't go easy, but Loki confidently tells him to be prepared. Pata, determined, agrees to do his best alongside Loki. In the shallow river, Loki tries to direct Pata, telling him to move rocks to find insects. Pata seems overwhelmed and confused. Realizing his instructions are too fast, Loki apologizes and slows down, asking Pata to simply flip over one specific rock. Pata, though looking tired, agrees. Loki gently asks if Pata understood him this time. To his surprise, Pata stands in the water, tears welling in his eyes as a profound realization dawns on him. He confirms with emotion, "I understand your words." Overcome with joy, Pata lunges forward and wraps Loki in a crushing hug, shouting that he can now talk with Loki too. Loki is completely taken aback, squeezed tightly in the boy's embrace. From ashore, Zink and Mei-chan watch in amazement, impressed that Pata was able to understand him. He is taken aback by the sudden embrace, and a realization dawns on him. He wonders if his foreign language comprehension skill gained experience simply by talking to Pata, pondering if this makes him a teacher of this world's language. Pushing the thought aside for the moment, he smiles as Pata, Zink, and Mei-chan congratulate him on his efforts. He suggests that to celebrate, he wants to take them all to a special store. Following his suggestion, the group makes their way through the town, with an ecstatic Pata running ahead of the others. They share a joyful meal together, the children's faces alight with happiness as they eat. Loki watches them, a content look on his face. A few days later, Loki awakens in his room, stretching and noticing his body feels much lighter. He makes a mental note that he needs to ask Mei-chan's mother about the price of the expensive medicine he used. Feeling refreshed, he decides to check his status. He confirms that with his recent earnings, he has accomplished his goal of saving 1.5 million beak. A system notification reveals that both his charge and presence detection skills have leveled up to 3. He steps out of his room, thinking it best to deposit his money at the guild, when Amandan suddenly appears before him in a flash. With a furious expression, she demands to know why he hasn't been to visit her. She leans in close, clarifying that her anger isn't because she misses him. Loki, confused by her sudden appearance and intense demeanor, can only ask if something has happened. Her fury instantly melts into a triumphant grin. She congratulates him, announcing that his promotion to F rank has been approved. Seeing the perfect timing, Loki's expression hardens with resolve. He requests a withdrawal, declaring his intent to sort his equipment and challenge the Raka's planes. At the guild counter, Amandan congratulates Loki on his promotion to F rank, noting that the new license looks good on him. Holding the simple card, Loki asks if it's possible to change the material it's made from. With a knowing smile, Amandan confirms that he can. She explains that it will cost an extra fee to process the change. Just as various minerals are assigned to hunter ranks, from copper for F rank to adamant for S rank, the material of the card can be changed, though she notes it's done arbitrarily. Loki seems puzzled by this system. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He shouts in outrage, recognizing the system for what it is, a microtransaction. In response to his outburst, Amandan calmly lays out the guild's reasoning. She explains that the guild is a business and would go bankrupt if it gave away precious minerals for free. Besides, she adds, only high rankers truly care about their card's quality, so they are effectively just charging the wealthy. His focus shifts from the cost to the hierarchy itself. He looks intently at Amandan and asks if S rank is really the highest rank achievable. He then mutters that using adamant for the highest rank feels somewhat underwhelming. His comment piques Amandan's interest, and she leans forward, asking what makes him question it. Confirming his suspicion, she reveals that he is correct. There used to be a rank even higher than S in the past. However, she explains, that entire rank has vanished, as no hunter in the modern era possesses the ability to reach such legendary heights. Amandan asks if he is now curious about the lost rank. Loki quickly dismisses the notion, saying no. Internally, however, a thought takes root. If current hunters can't reach that rank, it implies that non-hunters might exist who could. This realization sends his mind spiraling into a familiar obsession. He imagines a world of ISEKAI'D reincarnation and the existence of a cheat hero, a powerful individual reborn into this world with unearned advantages. His frustration boils over into anger. He grits his teeth, enraged by the thought that if such a person were reincarnated as royalty, they would possess immense power and status without ever needing to struggle and climb the ranks as a hunter. His thoughts on the unfairness of it all were interrupted by Amandan's voice. She appeared before him, face obscured by a dark, hooded cloak, and offered to tell him more since he was so curious. Loki, however, was still fixated on the idea of this other Japanese person, wondering about the vast gap between them and resolving that he truly wanted to meet this individual, if they were even still alive. She playfully confirmed she didn't mind telling him about the legend of the lost rank. But Loki, with a sudden burst of determination, dismissed the offer, declaring that he was still a low-rank adventurer, and that was fine for now. His sharp response impressed Amandan, who noted internally that she had never seen such a keen child before. Having left the guild, his mind raced with a checklist for his upcoming expedition. He needed to prepare for the Raqqa Plains, which meant buying supplies, antidotes, and gathering information. With a determined expression, he concluded that all that remained was to purchase a weapon and armor for Paisasan's store. He would set off early the next morning. Upon arriving at the blacksmith shop, his plan hit a major snag. The burly smith informed him that while he had leather in stock, crafting a custom set of armor would take 5 days. The news was so devastating that Loki's spirit seemed to fly out of his body, wailing in despair. The blacksmith remained unfazed by the display. Loki lamented that he had planned to reach the plains that very day, having woken up early for that purpose. He desperately asked if he couldn't just purchase some existing, ready-made armor, stating his other preparations were already complete. Paisa sternly explained that such matters involve life and death. Wearing ill-fitting gear would compromise his combat ability. Furthermore, he stated bluntly that he had no child-sized armor in stock. He then instructed Loki to come forward to be measured, adding that he could browse the weapons in the meantime. Dejected, Loki considered that he would just have to scout the plains without armor. His disappointment vanished in an instant, however, when his eyes landed on a specific sword in a display case. He excitedly called out to the blacksmith, asking to see that one. The blacksmith agreed and retrieved the weapon. The moment Loki held the broadsword, his face lit up with pure delight. He exclaimed that its size was perfect and, most importantly, it was within his budget. His joy quickly turned to puzzlement. He wondered aloud why it was so cheap compared to non-enchanted blades, only to discover it possessed a maximum magic power increase enchantment. He immediately understood. That was why no one wanted to buy it. He turned to the blacksmith, asking why he would craft such a sword knowing it wouldn't sell. Paisa explained that while dual-wielding is possible, the local E-rank hunters wouldn't buy a high-priced item, and magic power boosts are usually for staves. When pressed, Paisa apologized and confusingly stated he only made it because he heard from the lady at the jewel store that Paisasan could do enchantments. He internally questions the blacksmith's decision to create a sword no one would want, just as the magic stone shopkeeper, Maou, appears. She calls the blacksmith an idiot, confirming that it was she who made him craft the weapon. The blacksmith, Paisa, looks down with a somber expression. He quietly reveals that he created the sword for his son. The revelation stuns Loki into silence. He realizes with a jolt that he should have understood the situation. The blacksmith had never mentioned his son, and the fact that the unwanted sword was on display should have been a clue. He blurts out, "You have a so," before catching himself. He quickly apologizes, understanding now that the sword is a memento. The blacksmith, however, tells him not to worry, explaining that his son would have been excited to become an adventurer at Loki's age. Loki, still hesitant, asks if he's sure about selling it. With renewed resolve, Loki declares that he will buy it. A faint, sad smile crosses the blacksmith's face as he agrees, saying he's sure his son would be happier that way. The blacksmith's demeanor suddenly shifts. His face darkens, cast in shadow, and his voice becomes grave as he leans forward. You're not planning to go to the Raka's plains without wearing armor, are you? Startled by the intense question, Loki flinches. After a moment's hesitation, he admits that he cannot lie and confirms that is exactly what he plans to do. He internally justifies his decision. He is already level 8, and his stats show he's strong enough. He believes the experience he has gained has reached its limit in his current area. Therefore, while it may be reckless, he reasons he should be able to fight the F-tier monsters of Raka's plains if he is careful. His mind flashes back to how he became so strong, by leveling up relentlessly, often with guild members casting buffs or taunts to help him survive. The blacksmith watches him, considering refusing the sale until the armor is ready, but concludes that someone else would simply wait, unlike Loki. Loki's expression hardens with resolve. He tells the blacksmith that even so, he will go. He cannot wait 4 days without knowing what the new hunting spot is like, insisting he can at least scout the area with a knife. The two men lock eyes in a tense standoff. His defiant words earn him a frustrated sigh from the blacksmith. The burly man covers his face with a gloved hand, muttering in exasperation about why Loki is saying the same thing as him. The blacksmith's thoughts drift back to a painful memory of his son, a young boy with determined eyes. He recalls how the boy died while he was pouring his heart into crafting a sword for him. Snapping back to the present, just as Loki begins to turn away, the blacksmith's voice cuts through the tension, ordering him to wait right there. Moments later, Loki stands clad in a new set of dark armor. The blacksmith smirks, noting that it fits perfectly. He explains with biting sarcasm that this armor can defend against an air mantis's wind magic, so one wouldn't get shredded to pieces. Loki, startled by the comment, can only stammer an apology. The blacksmith's smirk hardens into a grimace. He tells Loki to go ahead and die wearing that armor, vowing to kill him again if he does. Far from being deterred, Loki admits to himself that the threat is terrifying, but that very terror sharpens his focus. Seeing this strange resolve, the blacksmith changes his approach. He reveals a practice ground behind his store and hands Loki a different sword, telling him to try swinging it. As Loki takes the weapon, he asks if this was his son's sword, and if Paisa-san had been waiting for someone to finally wield it. The question hangs in the air as the blacksmith clenches his fist. He puts the sword through its paces, the blade a blur of motion. Loki remarks that it's light, easy to use, and feels perfect. He turns to the blacksmith with a determined look, thanking him and promising that he will not die. As the blacksmith watches, he sees not just Loki, but the ghost of his own son in the young man's focused movements. Now equipped with a new weapon and armor imbued with sentiment, Loki stands ready for the next stage of his journey. He feels a sense of readiness, as if he can finally move beyond the tutorial area of this world. Turning his attention to the matter of payment, he asks the blacksmith about the cost. In response to his question, Loki insists, "Please let me pay for it." The blacksmith, however, stands firm with his arms crossed, stating that it won't do and that payment isn't necessary. The disagreement quickly escalates into a shouting match. Loki desperately yells that he has the money and will pay, but the blacksmith roars back that he's not taking any money for it, as the gear was never for sale to begin with. Their heated argument echoes out from the workshop, with cries of "I'll pay" and "not needed," disturbing the peace of the street. Eventually, Loki walks away, feeling conflicted. He only paid for the sword, leaving him with extra money. He muses that in a game, this would be a happy event, but now it just feels complicated. Having chatted with the nun Mirai-san before, but never having gone inside, he decides his final stop will be the church. He enters the church and is greeted by Mirai-san, who notes how distinguished he now looks. Loki's attention is drawn to the statues at the front, asking if they are goddesses and if the person kneeling before them is offering prayers. Mirai-san confirms that is correct. Following this, Loki makes his own request, asking Mirai-san to show him his status and presenting an offering. She accepts, instructing him to go to a room on the left where his status will be displayed on a stone slab. Loki is taken aback, realizing the information is completely visible to anyone present. He thinks about how convenient it is to check his status, but the public nature of the stone slab troubles him. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he whispers to Mirai-san, asking if the status check's detail might depend on the size of the offering he provides. His question is met with explosive anger. Mirai-san grabs him by his new armor, shouting that of course it doesn't work that way, and that asking such a thing is asking for punishment. Terrified, Loki can only stammer an apology. He stood there, stunned, as the nun's fury suddenly gave way to laughter. She explained that since they were in the countryside, they had little to do with the central authority, the Fanmel Empire. However, she noted that significant contributions to the church could earn one an invitation to grand imperial events. Her explanation made him realize the sheer financial influence at play, a system befitting a wealthy empire. He confirmed to himself that he had gathered more than enough for an offering, but his mind was already moving on to his primary goal. He pushed aside thoughts of finance, remembering the true reason he had come to the church. It was time for his class selection. The nun, noticing his determined expression, began to explain the process. She likened class selection to receiving the goddess's divine protection itself, urging him to pray sincerely for his desired outcome. Though she seemed surprised he was eligible, she elaborated that this divine protection conferred significant advantages. Upon obtaining a class, one would not only gain a unique skill, but also find that all related skills would level up at once, and future experience gains would be boosted. He absorbed this, asking if classes also had ranks. The nun confirmed his understanding, and he internally tried to process this new game-like element, framing it as a growth bonus to make sense of it all. His thoughts then turned to the possibility of a special class. As if on cue, the nun mentioned that their church had an old priest capable of receiving a divine revelation, a statement that struck Loki with immense force. He eagerly pressed for more information, but she quickly quieted him, warning him not to speak of such things so loudly. She admitted that in a small town like this, she had only ever witnessed beginner and intermediate rank classes before turning to summon the old priest. Moments later, he stood before the man, an elderly priest named Trail. After Loki introduced himself and stated his purpose, Trail calmly confirmed that a class selection via divine revelation was still possible. Loki swallowed hard, realizing he was in the presence of a special class holder. He studied the priest, noting that for someone so important, Trail didn't look remarkable. In fact, his placid presence was strangely calming. The priest, in turn, observed Loki with a pensive, uncertain thought. He stood before the priest, his mind racing. He now understood that a priest was a special class with unique skills and usage limits. Wondering if he could still receive divine protection despite his ignorance, he bowed his head slightly. "Pleased to meet you, sir." The priest, Trail, offered a kind smile in response. He advised Loki not to let shame over his ignorance stop him from moving forward, reminding him that people are born and grow up in different places. He simply encouraged him to keep learning. Taking in his surroundings, Loki observed statues of 6 goddesses: Lee-sama of commerce, Rhea-sama of sin, Regal-sama of war, Feral-sama of life, Alicia-sama of love, and Feline-sama of fertility. He learned that these 6 goddesses love all humans without discrimination. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. The acorn-headed god he knew was not among them. This realization prompted him to ask Trail if the people of Bizarre only worshipped these 6. The priest, seemingly expecting the question, confirmed that it is said there are only 6 goddesses in this world. Trail then began the ritual instructions. He explained that Loki was free to offer a prayer to any of the goddesses for his class selection, though he might come across an unexpected class. He instructed Loki to kneel and strongly focus his mind on the class he wished to be. If his thoughts were conveyed, Trail would announce the result through his divine revelation. Kneeling and clasping his hands, Loki acknowledged that this time, he truly had to rely on the gods. He began his prayer, addressing the gods and goddesses and stating his desire to attain a class. He focused his will with fierce intensity, concentrating on the specific attributes he wanted. He desired a class that grows easily in strength and defense, one that excels in close combat. He repeated his wish, pouring all his intent into the prayer. In the midst of his concentration, a faint sound reached his ears, causing a flicker of confusion. The sound resolved into faint whispers, as if the goddesses were speaking amongst themselves. He heard the words call, "Prepare," before a clear, firm voice instructed him, "All right, you can open your eyes." He opened his eyes, startled. That wasn't Trail's voice. It sounded rather young. Before him was not the priest, but a vision of several women, one of whom bore a striking resemblance to a younger Mirai-san. He found himself in a space filled with light, standing before 3 ethereal women. One, with long, flowing hair, fixed her gaze upon him, her voice echoing as she demanded to know who he was. Disoriented, he looked around, wondering where he was. The realization struck him. These must be the goddesses. He started to say that he had his own questions for them, but a sharp voice cut him off, commanding him to quit the useless chatter. The command came from the winged goddess, whose face twisted in fury. Before he could react, she struck him with brutal force, sending him tumbling backward through the air. She screamed at him to just answer their question. As the impact rattled him, his surroundings dissolving into darkness, a single, defiant thought surfaced in his mind. He didn't care. From the encroaching shadows, the small, childlike goddess reached a hand toward his fallen form. Her voice, devoid of emotion, declared that he was an anomaly in this world. Her eyes widened, her placid expression vanishing, replaced by a terrifying intensity. Looking down at the stunned man on the ground, she delivered her verdict. "I'll erase you." Loki is pinned to the ground, his face contorted in agony. The small, childlike goddess holds his hands, her expression unreadable. As Loki gasps for air, a second, light-haired goddess shouts for the first one, Rhea, to stop. She acknowledges that Loki is an anomaly, but insists they haven't even heard his story yet. Released, he struggles to his knees. The light-haired goddess now addresses him directly, demanding to know who he is and why he is in this world. She concedes that it's understandable for him to be confused. Loki, trembling from the ordeal, looks up at his interrogator, realizing he had almost died. He begins to explain his circumstances. He states that his previous name was Mamiya Yudo and that he was kidnapped without knowing anything. He describes falling into a mysterious space before arriving here, and clarifies that his name is now Loki. While he speaks, the goddesses confer amongst themselves. The winged one, Regal, notes that she couldn't read his mind at certain moments. The light-haired goddess speculates he was swallowed by a dimensional gap, which would explain his ignorance. Loki, however, has a chilling internal realization. When he tried to speak about the acorn-headed figure, he was physically unable to form the words. He understands now that they can't fully read his mind and are judging him as a dangerous otherworlder. The winged goddess adds that it wasn't just his mind. Their divine eyes were unable to perceive his skills. This leads the light-haired goddess to wonder if he possesses no skills at all, or if he is suffering from memory loss. Loki can only look on, baffled by their conclusions. Breaking her silence, Rhea's expression turns serious. She suggests that he might be using some power unknown to them, and then voices a dangerous conclusion. She believes he is quite dangerous. The situation grows dire for Loki. The goddesses debate his fate. The light-haired one suggests they should consult higher gods, like Furzasama, since their jurisdiction has been abandoned. The winged goddess, however, dismisses the idea. She declares Loki an unidentified being, far too dangerous to be allowed to live. As Rhea calmly suggests they talk things over, and Loki desperately pleads for them to listen to his story, a powerful voice booms through the space, silencing all. Shut up, anomaly. The word echoes in Loki's mind, a final, damning judgment. He finally snaps. The terror and frustration give way to incandescent rage. He has had enough. Clenching his fists, he roars, questioning if all gods are nothing more than self-centered, incompetent, and arbitrary beings. His defiance is met with fury. The winged goddess demands to know how he dares speak to them so, declaring his crime worthy of 1,000 deaths. Loki laughs back, shouting that he tried to be respectful, but they only wanted to kill him without listening. As Rhea pleads for them to stop, the winged goddess makes her final decree. They will kill him and bring down divine punishment, even if the townspeople are affected. He finally snaps, his voice raw with anguish as he accuses the goddess of being no different from a criminal. He shouts that she doesn't care who gets hurt as long as it's convenient for her. His mind flashes back to his past, being suddenly kidnapped from his original world, thrown into a forest without explanation or proper conditions, and forcing himself to treat survival as a game just to cope. His tirade continues, recounting the desperate struggle for survival. He had no knowledge, no water, no food. He was forced to fight monsters, to eat fish raw because he couldn't cook. He remembers the profound relief and joy when he finally met people and was welcomed to Bizarre Town, thinking he could at last live a proper life. Tears stream down his face as he reaches the peak of his emotional breakdown. He demands to know why this is being done to him, pleading to know if it's truly so wrong to desperately want to survive. He recalls that although his own parents had disowned him, the people of this new world, Amandan, Paisa, Yagav, and the children, had all acknowledged and praised him, making him feel genuinely happy. As his anger subsides into despair, he resigns himself to his fate, believing this is the end. He thinks back to his old wish to be reborn in a world where effort is rewarded, and the painful irony that he's about to die despite his promise to Paisa-san. His emotional confession hangs in the air. The light-haired goddess, who had been listening intently, now looks at him with a sharp, analytical gaze. Her demeanor has changed from judgment to intense curiosity as she asks a single, piercing question. Who actually are you? The question seems to ground him, tears still marking his face. He looks up and answers with weary honesty. He doesn't know. He is not a god. He is just a man who clings to life, one who has only just begun to find joy in this world. His answer prompts a theory from the goddess. She explains that deities like her sometimes reincarnate the souls of those who died in another world, summoning them here. In that process, they sometimes bestow special skills. She speculates that something similar might have happened to him and asks a final, crucial question. Before he arrived, was he bestowed with any kind of skills? Loki processes her words, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Oh, that's what you mean, he murmurs, before repeating her key question back to himself. Skills. He begins to explain, confirming that he received two things. The first, he calls youth restoration, revealing that although he appears young, he is actually 32 years old. The second is a status screen, which allows him to view his own statistics, displaying his identity as Mamiya Yudo, level 1. He clarifies that he believes these two abilities are youth restoration and status screen, though he is unsure if they truly count as skills. He then adds a crucial detail. There are two fields on a status screen whose contents are hidden from view. He watches as the goddesses confer amongst themselves. The winged one, Regal, asks for an assessment of his status screen, and the small goddess, Rhea, confirms that he is not lying. To elaborate, he explains that his ability is like a status screen from the games of his original world. It allows him to see his stats, such as strength and intelligence, as well as his level. He adds that there is also a skill tree to check learned and learnable skills, and that he can see blessings and titles, though he possesses none yet. He struggles to simplify the concept, which prompts questions from the goddesses. Regal asks if it is some kind of foundation established by a figure named Furza, while the light-haired goddess wonders if this ability is superior to what they can perceive with their own divine eyes. The light-haired goddess concludes with certainty that a higher-ranking god must be involved. Loki continues, explaining that while he heard locals can check their skills by praying to the goddesses, his screen is far more detailed. It quantifies everything into skill points, allowing him to see exactly what is needed to acquire a skill and letting him allocate the points himself. He internally muses that they should now understand his ability isn't an overpowered cheat skill. A moment later, panic flashes across his face as he remembers that the goddesses can read his mind. His composure finally breaks. He shouts at the goddesses, demanding to know if they realize they tried to kill him without even listening to his circumstances or introducing themselves. His furious outburst strikes a chord. The three goddesses, Rhea, Regal, and the light-haired one, bow low to the ground in a profound gesture of apology. Their sudden deference catches him off guard. He stammers that it's fine as long as they understand his situation, then quickly apologizes for his own harsh words before stating the reason he came to the church. He finally asks his primary question, his expression a mask of pure confusion. He wants to know why he is unable to choose a class. The winged goddess, Regal, clarifies that it has nothing to do with his aptitude. She explains that they, the six goddesses who manage this world, are considered lesser goddesses and have not been granted the power to bestow blessings upon anyone not born into this world. He then asks the goddess if she could return him to his original world, but she regretfully informs him that they do not possess such power. His thoughts drift to the goddess Alicia, who had been so desperate and was the only one to truly listen to him. He is suddenly struck by her appearance, thinking to himself that she is cute. The goddess he is speaking with is taken aback by his sudden distraction, stammering that it is their duty to show him the path to salvation. Attempting to regain control of the conversation, she tells Loki that since he must be troubled by his lack of knowledge, the goddesses will provide him with advice. A screen materializes, detailing the skill Divine Revelation, a priest-exclusive ability to receive messages from the goddesses once per day. Loki can only muster confused. He seeks clarification, asking if Divine Revelation is merely a one-way channel, allowing the goddesses to speak to him but not the other way around. The goddess confirms that his understanding is correct. She attempts to reassure him by explaining they can only perceive individuals near their statues in churches, so he won't be monitored at all times. Loki, however, dismisses the notion entirely, thinking that with his status screen, he has no need to ever visit a church. Loki's frustration boils over as he questions if the gods even understand the concept of consent. The goddess, Alicia, becomes flustered. She reveals that two-way communication is possible with the celestial channeling skill exclusive to shrine maidens. As an apology, she declares she will make an exception, using nearly all her power to bestow this very skill upon him, much to the shock of the other goddesses. Waking in a proper bed, Loki realizes the events were not a dream. He checks his status and confirms the new reality. He now possesses both Divine Revelation and Celestial Channeling, a shrine maiden skill allowing 1 minute of communication with the goddesses per day for 50 MP. The truth sinks in. He really cannot obtain new classes. He resolves to be positive, celebrating that he has obtained a special skill to communicate with the goddesses, marking the true start of his new life. Though concerned for Alicia's condition after her sacrifice, he decides to test the Celestial Channeling skill immediately before he goes to sleep. Upon activating the skill, his mind is flooded with a cacophony of voices. The goddesses all speak at once. Regal chastises Alicia. Rhea demands to talk. Phelan is accused of trying to get ahead, and Feral, the goddess of life, introduces herself. Loki is caught in the middle of their chaotic, overlapping conversation, all of them vying for his attention. A slow realization dawns on him. This overwhelming chaos is the Celestial Channeling skill, usable only once a day and at a cost. He reeled from the chaotic flood of voices, his mind fracturing under the assault. With a roar of pure frustration, he slammed his fist down, declaring the new ability a worthless, trash skill. Attempting to regain his composure, he tried to find a silver lining, but the effort only left him dizzy and disoriented. His frustration boiled over once more as he raged internally, questioning the very existence of such useless goddesses and lamenting that he had gained no useful information from the experience. His outburst, however, brushed against a fundamental truth of this new reality. The world was indeed managed by a pantheon, consisting of lower-ranked goddesses and a single, high-ranked god who presided over them all. This knowledge solidified his resolve. On that day, he decided he would live by his own rules. Yet, a chilling thought surfaced as he looked upon the serene image of the goddess Rhea. Was this newfound determination also a calculated move, falling within the palm of the acorn-headed, higher god Furza? He dismissed the doubt, his expression hardening with purpose. Loki recalls the traumatic moment his pleas were ignored. His words and tears had overflowed as he tried to make the goddesses listen, but in response, he was suppressed and threatened with death. He remembers that in the end, despite the ordeal, he received a rare skill from the goddess that would allow him to communicate with them. But that is all in the past now. In the present day, a town guard remarks on Loki's diligence, but asks if he is okay. Putting on a brave face, Loki confirms he is off to hunt in the Rachna plains again and accepts some food from man. He forces a weary smile, telling the guard not to worry. With a strained expression, he declares that he will simply shake it off. As he walks away, however, his internal thoughts betray his true state. He feels that Priest Trail's recent kindness only made him feel guilty. He couldn't choose a new job and ended up arguing with the goddesses about offerings, concluding that the whole affair has been a disaster because of them. Frustrated that he can't easily shake off his feelings and explore the plains he's longed for, he mentally screams for his precious time to be returned. His agitation is palpable as he stomps through the town street, a large basket now visible on his back. He pauses, looking down from higher elevation at a bustling market street teeming with people and stalls. A mental map clarifies his position. He is in Bizart, near the North Gate, with his destination, the Rachna Plains, lying ahead. He takes note of the lively atmosphere. Descending into the crowd, he observes that this area has far more stalls and people than the South Gate he first entered. For a moment, it truly feels like a fantasy world. He spots a party of adventurers ahead and decides to follow them, figuring they will lead him to the Rachna Plains. His assumption proves correct, and he arrives at the vast, open expanse of the Rachna Plains. With no one else attempting to hunt solo, he feels a surge of excitement, declaring it's time for a hunt. He notes that while the open view makes spotting monsters easy, it also makes him an easy target, and he'll have to put his basket down every time he finds something. As he decides to test the waters, a new opponent materializes before him, an air mantis of an unknown level, challenging the level 8 Loki. The creature's natural coloring makes it difficult to see in the tall grass. Realizing this, Loki narrows his eyes, preparing a countermeasure. In response, he activates his Detect Presence skill, instantly pinpointing the camouflage mantis's exact location. With its location revealed, he charges forward with a triumphant shout, his sword flashing as he cleanly slices the creature in half. His victory is short-lived as his attention is immediately drawn to another monster, a poison mouse. He reasons that if he can finish it quickly without alerting its kin, it will be an easy kill. Before he can act, the creature lunges. He's shocked by how slow its attack is, but his body is already in motion, and he finds himself unable to stop his forward momentum, running directly into its bite. The bite sends him to the ground. As he lies there in surprise, a system notification appears. He has acquired Poison Resistance, LV.1. A moment later, it updates again, jumping straight to LV.2. He pushes himself up, baffled by the immediate level up. He realizes that with just one kill, he lacks information, but the rapid skill gain makes one thing clear. The poison mouse seems to be a great target for hunting. He presents his haul to the guild's material processor, Rhodey. Out of a total of 21 poison mice, one is deemed unsalvageable due to a damaged poison sac, but the rest are rated as A-grade materials. Loki explains that he missed his aim on the first one he hunted because the creature was slower than he expected. As Rhodey confirms that one didn't make the cut, Loki reflects on his recent success. The air mantis wasn't much of a challenge, making him wonder if he overtrained in Palmyra and should head to the Lilith Forest early. Rhodey, sensing his confidence, asks if he's planning to tackle the forest solo, reminding him how slow even the poison mouse is. The question startles him into a realization. This is exactly how people stray from the correct path. He recalls a common pitfall from his past life. When things go too well, one starts to believe they are stronger than they actually are. This overconfidence leads to recklessly charging powerful enemies, a trap that causes many to lose everything and quit in frustration. He understands now that Rhodey was testing him. He explains that the difficulty in Lilith Forest spikes dramatically, and with his current build, he'd be sent flying by orcs even with armor. Hearing this sensible self-assessment, Rhodey laughs, declaring that's the right spirit. Loki affirms he won't enter the next area until he's confident in his strength on the Rachna Plains. Rhodey adds another practical warning, noting that it's not just about combat. The most profitable item in Lilith is orc meat, but it's incredibly heavy. He reminds Loki that no matter how many orcs a solo adventurer slays, they can only carry so much by themselves. Seeing that Loki is already aware of the material weight issue, Rhodey seems satisfied. He hands over a stack of coins, telling him to check if the amount is correct and advising him to endure the receptionist's lecture for now. Loki grimaces slightly, but accepts the payment, deciding to worry about the future when it arrives. Moments later, at the main guild counter, the guild master Yagov calls out to him, announcing that his payment is ready. As he approaches, Loki notices the party of young adventurers he saw earlier. He collects his earnings for the day, 41,400 beak. He overhears other adventurers nearby discussing their own finances, planning to rest for 2 or 3 days with their haul. Loki considers his own payment, thinking it's not a bad amount for his efforts. He calculates that he could live comfortably on just 5,000 beak a day, and it seems most adventurers here aim for around 10,000 daily. He concludes that simply observing the locals is proving to be quite educational. His gaze falls on the young party again. He reflects on the idea of joining a group. At first, he admired the concept, but after considering the logistics of shared experience and rewards, he decides it doesn't seem like a viable option for him at this time. He continued to weigh the pros and cons of solo work, considering the logistical nightmare of transporting materials. Even if he hired a porter, he would need someone with incredible stamina to keep up with his fast-paced hunting style. He wryly wondered if such a person even existed in this town. As he mulled this over at the guild, he reaffirmed his core motivation. The biggest obstacle to joining a party was the difference in goals. He wanted to pursue power to its absolute limit. His thoughts were abruptly cut short by a cheerful voice calling his name. Loki Kuin. Startled, he looked up to see a Mondan, who immediately asked when he was going to form a party, the very topic on his mind. Nearby, the young adventurer Zink watched with an annoyed expression, while another guild member noted that Loki was Amandan's favorite. A female staffer added that he was the promising rookie everyone was talking about, prompting a dismissive from Zink. 4 days later, Loki was out in the Rachna Plains, having made a crucial discovery while hunting poison mice. He realized that the experience gained for his skills was directly related to the monster's own skill level. In Palmyra, his level 0 charge skill gained 20% XP per kill. Here, defeating a poison mouse gave his level 3 poison resistance skill the same 20% XP, leading him to deduce the mice must possess the skill at a high level, perhaps level 4. This new understanding solidified his strategy. It would be most efficient to grind his poison resistance here before attempting the more dangerous Lila Forest. He set a goal, get the skill to at least level 6, or ideally, level 7. It would save him significant trouble later on. His plan, however, immediately ran into a practical problem. He sat dejectedly in the tall grass, realizing that stationary hunting wasn't a viable option in this area. The reason was simple. He couldn't take his eyes off his basket of materials for a second. He had learned another disturbing fact about the poison mice. They were cannibals, swarming to devour their fallen kin and any loot left nearby. As a self-proclaimed efficiency enthusiast, this was infuriating. He wanted to hunt them all in one concentrated area, but the constant threat to his materials made it impossible. The alternative of making regular 2-hour round trips back to Bazaar to store his loot was simply too exhausting to consider. He sat alone in the vast, grassy plains, his basket beside him, desperately trying to devise a solution. He needed some kind of platform, a safe spot out of the monster's reach where he could place his basket. Then a thought sparked. He recalled the earth magic skill he'd acquired from the Huli Mole. He briefly considered if he could use it, perhaps with a shovel, to pile up enough dirt to create a mound. But he quickly dismissed the notion, deeming it too unrealistic. He decided to test his nascent earth magic, first calling out a joking command, ground rise, to no effect. Trying again with more intent, he tapped his foot and repeated the words. To his astonishment, a small mound of earth pushed up from the ground. A quick check of his status confirmed it. His mana was decreasing. A spell had been activated. This unexpected success made him question what was different from his previous failures with fire magic. He recalled trying to cast spells with his hands, and a realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. The trigger for his earth magic wasn't his hands, but his feet. Emboldened, he shouted for the ground to rise more, and the earthen mound swelled in size. He immediately assessed its defensive potential, noting that while the quantity of earth had increased, it was still easily climbable for any monster. His mind raced with possibilities. If he could control the size, could he also customize the shape? He decided to experiment further, but a glance at his status revealed the high cost of his efforts. His mana had already dropped significantly. This was more expensive than he anticipated. He then attempted to form a specific shape, commanding the earth to create a pillar. The result was a short, stumpy column. He tried again, calling for many pillars, and a cluster of similarly short pillars emerged from the ground. He looked on, disappointed. They were not nearly as tall as he had envisioned. As he pondered the failure, a new idea began to form. Perhaps the spell's output could be refined. He theorized that by combining specific keywords, all within the scope of his current earth magic level, he could achieve more complex results. Putting his theory to the test, he tried to be more specific, commanding the creation of one long, thick pillar. Silence. The spell didn't even activate. He concluded he had been too greedy with his request. But then, a slow smile spread across his face as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. He understood now. The key was in the incantation. With newfound confidence, he bellowed the refined command. Create a long pillar. A towering column of earth shot up from the ground. A resounding success. He stared in awe, shouting in triumph. This was it, the secret to how magic worked in this world. He could finally hunt as much as he wanted from a safe vantage point. His elation, however, was short-lived as he looked up at the massive pillar and realized his basket was sitting on top, completely out of reach. Loki stands triumphant, a wide grin on his face as he presents a basket overflowing with his latest hunt. He declares this to be the result of his new strategy, fixed-point hunting. He reflects on his newfound abilities, musing that he can now summon a small flame from his fingertip. He wishes he could tell his past self, who struggled just to grill a fish, that this magic originates from his feet. The memory of the effort it took to retrieve his basket with his earth magic still lingers. As a tiny flame flickers to life on his index finger, his eyes go wide with shock and elation. He shouts in disbelief, amazed that the spell actually worked. His shout is cut short by a voice from behind him. Another adventurer asks if the reason he's still alone is because he's the rookie everyone is talking about. Startled, Loki whirls around to face the speaker. The adventurer, a young man with light, spiky hair, introduces himself as Adent. Flanked by a stern-faced warrior and a leering goblin, he declares that Loki is in luck and offers him a spot in their party. Loki stares back with a deadpan expression and bluntly refuses the offer. Adent's confident smirk vanishes, replaced by a look of utter disbelief. He explains that he prefers to go solo and that there's no need to worry about him. Adent, leaning over the counter in agitation, questions his refusal, insisting that hunting in a party is the only proper way for an adventurer to operate. Adent lectures him, saying he should rely on the kindness of his seniors and warns that cocky brats are the first to die because no one will willingly babysit them. Loki calmly apologizes but reaffirms his decision, stating he is fully prepared to go solo. Unfazed by the threats, Loki simply states that he'll be fine. Enraged, Adent points a finger at him, shouting that he'll report this to the guild and that Loki will regret it before storming off with his two companions. From a balcony above, Amandan watches the scene unfold. She realizes that Adent's party was obviously after Loki's strength, or more likely, his rewards. They must have rushed to recruit him before anyone else could. She expresses her relief that Loki brushed off Adent's party, offering him a warm smile. She clarifies that as a guild staff member, she can only go as far as issuing a warning and cannot play favorites beyond that. Loki agrees, acknowledging that her intervention alone was a big help. Despite his outward agreement, he internally reflects on the situation. He knows that getting into a dispute with residents of his art could make his life difficult, regardless if it would win. Still, he worries it will become troublesome if they decide to follow him persistently or resort to force, recalling that guild training states such matters are an adventurer's own responsibility. He leans against a wall, troubled by the predicament. He had thought his art was full of good people. Checking his status, he sees he has only managed to reach level 9 after 4 days of hunting in the Rocket Plains. He resolves to reach at least level 11, determined not to go back to Palmyra just to avoid Adent's party. As night falls over the town, his final thought before resting is a simple wish, that the situation does not escalate any further. His concerns are soon replaced by a new opportunity. At the guild, he spots his first emergency quest, an extermination mission for poison mice. The notice explains that their numbers have recently risen, suggesting an outbreak, and the reward has been increased. As his excitement builds, a sudden realization dawns on him. Could he be the reason for the outbreak? His attention is then drawn outside a window, where he sees Adent's party, the stern warrior and the goblin included, walking through the town streets. Putting the matter aside, he heads out to the hunting grounds. Carrying a large basket on his back, he crouches low in the tall grass, sword at the ready, focused on his hunt. His hunt is not uninterrupted. He soon realizes Adent's party is following him, panting as they struggle to keep pace. Looking back over his shoulder, Loki's face twists in frustration as he mutters how annoying they are. He finally stops and turns to confront them, demanding to know how long they plan on following him. With a smug grin, Adent casually replies that they're simply moving to a different hunting ground. He then closes the distance, his expression turning aggressive as he accuses Loki of being the one overlapping with their hunting ground. Visibly stressed, Loki retorts that their method is inefficient and tells them to go hunt somewhere else. He stands his ground, wondering if Adent's party is after the contents of his basket. Faced with their continued presence, he uses his creation magic as Adent reluctantly agrees, saying, fine. Recalling that his level 3 earth magic should allow for up to 4 keywords, he puts his theory to the test, incanting the words, create, deep, long, pillar. In response, a massive stone column erupts from the earth, sending Adent and his companions reeling in shock. He internally celebrates his success on the very first attempt as Adent stares, dumbfounded, demanding to know what he is. A quick push confirms the pillar is solid. The deep keyword had anchored it underground, just as he had planned. Seizing the opportunity, he puts on a confident air, announcing that he'll be off hunting and will demonstrate the difference in their skill levels. Adent, taken aback, can only wish him well. Once the other party is gone, he realizes he needs to retrieve his own basket. Picturing the required height, he casts again, this time creating a 5-meter-long pillar to use as a platform. The experiment is a success, though the sudden creation is startling. He makes a mental note of the cost, 26 MP per platform, and concludes he must carefully manage his magic points, using the travel time between hunts to recover. A smile spreads across his face as he considers how much more efficiently he can now hunt in the Rocket Plains. With renewed vigor, he raises his sword and sets off to find more prey. Later, utterly exhausted from having overdone it, he arrives at the guild's processing station. He presents a basket overflowing with poisoned mouse carcasses to the processor, Rhodey, who tells him to just leave it there for now. As Rhodey begins his work, he remarks that he knew Loki was the cause of the day's emergency quest. He explains that the guild simply misunderstood the situation due to the sheer number of monsters Loki had hunted, as no other adventurers had reported anything unusual about the poison mice. Rhodey clarifies that while Loki's actions did trigger the quest, it wasn't his fault. The mice weren't breeding out of control. Relieved, Loki confirms that this is correct. He stands before the guild processor, Rhodey, who confirms the staggering haul: 53 rank, 8 poison mice, and 12 air mantises. As requested, Rhodey agrees to hold onto the rewards. Despite his weary expression, Loki then asks if a larger basket is available, signaling his intent to continue hunting. The processor is taken aback by his seemingly endless ambition. The processor explains that while they do have larger baskets, they're almost always in use and would be difficult to handle. A sudden realization dawns on him, his expression shifting to one of strained disbelief. He concludes that Loki's ability to transport such an absurd quantity of materials must be due to incredible endurance, exclaiming that running back with that basket must have been exhausting. Overwhelmed by the sudden workload Loki has created, Rhodey bellows at another guild worker to stop staring and get moving, shouting that he's swamped because of Loki's presence. As he turns to leave, contemplating the need for a custom-made basket, his path is blocked. Adant, flanked by his 2 companions, stands before him with a predatory grin. "Good work out there," the young adventurer says, extending his hand. "Now, hand that over." He attempts to ignore the trio and walk past, but Adant quickly moves to intercept him, calling out to the receptionist, Amandan, to get her attention for a report on the day's events. With Amandan now observing Adant and his party corner Loki, the young adventurer loudly proclaims that Loki had joined their party, twisting his earlier words of "do your best" into an agreement. Adant argues that by leaving his basket, Loki was clearly signaling his willingness to join them, and therefore, the rewards should be split equally. Loki stares, aghast at the brazen fabrication. He internally fumes at their persistence. He recalls how the guild worker had backed off upon sensing a difference in power, and wonders why these adventurers are not doing the same. The thought crosses his mind that perhaps only an overwhelming display of cheat-level strength would be enough to make them understand. Deciding against violence, he turns to Amandan with a calm expression. He asks her to publicly state the hunter rank and total daily earnings for Adant's party. Confused, Adant questions why he would need to tell him that. Amandan consults her records and announces that all 3 are rank F, with combined earnings of around 42,000 beak. Having heard enough, Loki resolves not to remain silent any longer. Her gaze then shifts, sharp and accusatory, toward Adant. She coolly reminds him that he was the one who insisted Loki was part of his group and that the rewards should be divided equally. Cornered, Adant meekly agrees that he did. Realizing he's been outmaneuvered, Adant lashes out, accusing Amandan of favoritism and declaring she has no right to reveal their information. Before he can continue his tirade, Loki cuts in. He scoffs at the idea of needing their share, a mere 5,000 beak, and then poses a cutting question to the entire room. What kind of idiot would form a party with a group that's nothing but a disadvantage, when they can earn 400,000 beak solo? His public humiliation of the party did little to deter them. Adant, with a sharp-toothed grin, taunted him, asking what he would do if they were his enemies, no different from monsters. With a cold, unwavering gaze, Loki delivered his final warning. If they continued to persistently follow him, he would consider them his enemy. He elaborated on his threat, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. If they were going to keep harassing and interfering with him, they were no different from goblins. Anyone who sided with Adant would also be treated as an enemy, and he would kill them all without mercy. Adant could only stare back, stammering in disbelief. The disbelief quickly morphed into rage. Adant lunged forward, shouting at Loki not to get too cocky. The escalating commotion caught Amandan's attention. Recognizing the danger and Loki's involvement, she urgently cried out for someone to call the guildmaster. As if summoned by her call, a stern, authoritative voice cut through the noise. The guildmaster, Yagav, stood at the top of a nearby staircase, his expression severe. He demanded to know the cause of the commotion, stating they were bothering everyone else. With a commanding tone, he ordered them all to come with him. A core principle of Loki's former life resurfaces. Overturning rules is easy. To get what you want, you simply make refusal the more troublesome option. That way, superiors pass the burden down, avoiding direct confrontation. In the guildmaster's office, however, such tactics are irrelevant. Zink explodes with rage, demanding to know why Yagav is siding with the cocky brat Loki. The guildmaster remains composed, stating that he is not siding with anyone and that, having already spoken with Loki, he will now hear Zink's side before making a judgment. Hearing this, Loki feels a wave of relief. He is genuinely glad that a person like Yagav is present to handle the situation. He asks what the guildmaster means, prompting Yagav to explain his primary concern. He wants to avoid any situation where someone could die, as much as possible. Across from them, Zink seethes in frustration. Yagav elaborates on the worst-case scenario, warning that if Loki and Zink's party were to become enemies, there would be a significant risk of others getting caught in the crossfire. Zink can't believe what he's hearing, scoffing that Loki is just a kid. The guild master dismisses this, questioning if Zink is even aware of the situation. He points out that the sheer quantity of materials Loki brings back in a single day is abnormal and proof of his true strength. Overhearing himself described as not normal stings Loki, but he decides to maintain a tough facade, suspecting Yagov has been wary of him from the beginning. Yagov then lays out the facts of the case. He recounts how Zink's party submitted a false report, then forcibly tried to recruit Loki, and when that failed, they attempted to rob him of his materials. He turns to Amandan, asking if she seriously expects him to believe they weren't trying to pick a fight. With the evidence laid bare, Yagov delivers his verdict. He declares their actions unacceptable. In accordance with guild regulations, Zink and his companion are hereby permanently expelled from the hunter registry. Their future as hunters, he states regretfully, is over. Zink protests weakly, claiming they didn't actually take anything. Yagov retorts that they are lucky it only ended as attempted robbery. Had they succeeded, the matter would have moved beyond guild jurisdiction and into the realm of legal prosecution. As a final, small mercy, the guild master says he will refer them to other kinds of work, telling them to be grateful they didn't end up as slaves. The two disgraced hunters are left in utter despair, wondering what they are supposed to do now. Inside the guild master's office, Amandan remarks that Yagov found a neat solution to the conflict with Zink's party. Yagov, however, turns his attention to Loki, who is just out of view, and asks if he is truly satisfied with how things were wrapped up. In response, Loki steps forward, his expression intense. He declares that the punishment is nowhere near enough. It's far too soft. Both Yagov and a shocked Zink stare at him, taken aback by his vehemence. He continues, explaining that while he understands their expulsion, he isn't satisfied because that punishment only concerns them, not him. What he wants, he states, is compensation for what he was put through. Zink, incredulous, asks if Loki is demanding an apology fee on top of everything else. Zink's companions begin to plead. One cries that he is about to get married, while another insists they don't have that kind of money. Loki's face remains a cold mask. He tells them it's not his problem, and that if they didn't consider the risks of their actions, then it is their own fault. His thoughts turn venomous as he declares that they got what they deserved. He is no hero, but no villain either. He has seen too many people like them. He resolves to instill such terror in their minds that they will spend the rest of their lives regretting they ever tried to rob him. Yagov warns him that pushing them further might make them snap and seek revenge. Loki welcomes the possibility, stating that if thieves come after him, he will simply beat them. His face contorts with rage as he admits he wants to kill them right now, but is holding back, noting that since they are criminals, he could do so without remorse. At this, the terrified party finally breaks. Zink and his companions, bruised and weeping, fall to their knees. They plead for mercy, offering to give Loki all their money, their equipment, everything they have. They can only repeat that they are sorry. Moments later, Amandan looks out a window, muttering in surprise. Outside, Loki stands watch as Zink and his party are forced to clean the grounds on their hands and knees. Back inside, Yagov asks Loki if this is how he normally handles things. Loki avoids the question, instead thanking the guildmaster for his help and offering him a small pouch, the compensation from Zink's party, for the trouble he caused. Yagov smiles, remarking that he'd best stay safe around Loki, though he doubts he would do anything truly shady. Loki looks away, clenching his fist. He explains that while it might seem excessive, he genuinely despises people who would hurt others without hesitation. His business with Zink's party concluded, he turns to Amandan, asking if the guild could sell him some potions. He requests that she give them to Zink and the others, explaining that he now owes the three of them a debt. She agrees to hold onto his things and see to the delivery, a small smile on her face as she remarks that he is a truly strange person. As she departs, the guild master, Yagov, approaches. He expresses fascination that Loki cleared the Rocco plains without using a potion and mentions it may be time for his E-rank assessment. Loki interjects that, even with a promotion, he won't be going to Lulu Forest. Yagov simply nods, remarking that such caution is a valuable trait in a hunter. He continues, warning Loki to stay sharp, as this is unlikely to be the last incident of its kind. Yagov then recites a proverb, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down." Loki retorts that while he'll try not to stand out, he has no intention of being hammered down without a fight. A knowing smile crosses Yagov's face as he wonders aloud if he pronounced the otherworld language correctly. Loki freezes, utterly shocked, as he recognizes the distinctly Japanese proverb. He explains that he has had doubts since their first meeting, Loki's clothes, his belongings, the very way his mouth moves when he speaks. But after hearing him use that specific phrase, Yagov declares that he is now certain. A sudden realization hits Loki. His otherworld language comprehension skill must have activated, translating the proverb perfectly. Before he can process this, Yagov confronts him directly. "Loki, you are from another world, aren't you?" The question leaves Loki wide-eyed with shock. His mind races, wondering what the guildmaster intends to do with him. Yagov quickly puts him at ease, stating he has no intention of becoming his enemy. Instead, he has a job offer. He simply wants Loki to identify a certain recovered object for a commission of 1 million beak. The sheer generosity of the offer makes Loki even more suspicious. Yagov laughs, telling him to think of it as a bribe to win over someone who is soft on his friends. Despite his wariness, Loki's curiosity is piqued. He agrees to the proposal, deciding to take a day off the following day to undertake the mysterious task. The guild master thanks him, instructing him to come to the guild when the noon bell rings before turning to depart. As the man leaves, Loki watches him go, a sense of unease settling in. He admits to himself that he has a bad feeling about Yuggoth. Just then, a distant voice calls his name, asking if he can hear her. It is the goddess of war, Regal, looking down from a high tower, expressing that she'll be looking forward to their next talk. Elsewhere, the goddess Alicia speaks to her companions. She relays that everyone regrets what they did to Loki and eagerly awaits the day they can speak with him again. She sent a message out to him, asking him to call when he has time, but also voices her concern that he hasn't used his celestial channeling skill since that day, wondering if he's all right. Her concern seems to reach him, sparking a realization. He remembers he has a question for the goddesses and that this is good timing. He clenches his fist, grimacing as he recalls the shitty skill, determined not to repeat the last disaster. With this resolve, he sits on his bed and activates celestial channeling. A system notification displays the skill is now level 2, allowing communication for 2 minutes. He calls out, asking if anyone can hear him, and a cheerful voice immediately responds, recognizing him as Loki Quinn. The voice belongs to Phelan, the goddess of fertility, who is thrilled that this is her first time speaking with him. She gushes that talking to him is great fun and that his level is higher, so they could talk longer. Loki, however, feels a sense of dread, realizing that peeking into the mortal realm is their only entertainment and sensing this could be bad. Before he can respond, a new, more composed voice cuts in. She introduces herself as Least, the goddess of commerce, and states that if he is using celestial channeling, he must have business with them. She firmly tells Phelan to switch with her, asserting that this is not playtime. He listens as Least explains that during the channeling, they can read his thoughts, so he just needs to think of his question. Loki is relieved, glad that at least one of the goddesses is calm and collected. He internally praises her as cool, intellectual, and without any openings, a wonderful person to deal with. As he prepares his question, his frustration suddenly boils over. He thinks about how he should have met the conditions to use magic long ago, yet for days his spells didn't work at all. The goddesses react with a shriek, exclaiming that he's too loud and confirming they can read his mind. Embarrassed, Loki apologizes for the stray thought and asks to move on. Composing himself, he finally asks his question. From their perspective, is there any reason why he suddenly became able to use magic one day? He clarifies that it was the day after he went to the church. The goddess considers this, then cryptically replies that while there could be several reasons, in his case, it might be because of who he is, leaving Loki confused. He listens as the goddess Alicia elaborates on the nature of magic. She explains that its use is aided by spirits that drift throughout the world, consuming mana as their food. With a frustrated expression, she adds that because Loki couldn't even recognize the existence of these spirits, the goddesses themselves failed to notice his actions. The revelation sends a jolt through him. He internally fumes, realizing that if he hadn't met the goddesses, he might never have used magic at all, and silently curses the acorn-headed being for the confusing communication. That being, Rhea, interjects that the explanation isn't entirely accurate, but it's a likely possibility since spirits are followers of the gods. Rhea then admits to never having considered the origin of magic before. His internal rant manifests as a grimace, which Rhea notices. They remark that, at a certain point, they were unable to read Loki's thoughts. Flustered, Loki quickly apologizes, explaining he was complaining about something he couldn't even name. He then forces a smile, stating he feels better now that he has an answer, while a thought about the guild master Yuggoth and the town of Lulu flashes through his mind. Seizing the opportunity, he decides to ask another question. He tells the goddess he wants to learn a certain skill, one that would allow him to store his things in a different space, taking them out and putting them back freely, much like an item box. He asks what such a skill would be called. The goddess considers his request and suggests the name, space magic. She then reveals that the otherworlder to whom she gave that skill used it for that exact purpose. Loki is stunned by this new piece of information, letting out a gasp of surprise as the goddess reminds him that skill points are precious. His shock is cut short by a dreadful realization. He cries out in frustration as the 2-minute time limit for his celestial channeling expires, lamenting that the time was far too short, especially now that he's learned of another otherworlder. As his connection to the divine realm begins to sever, his mind races. He reflects on the valuable information he just obtained, the existence of spirits and space magic, and considers that his planned trip to the guild tomorrow to see Yuggoth might lead to something significant. A thrill runs through him with the thought that the story is finally moving forward. But the excitement is fleeting. His consciousness begins to fade, the celestial vision dissolving into darkness as he is pulled back to reality. Sunlight streams into a rustic room as Loki sits up in bed, blinking. He is startled to realize it is already morning. He tries to gather his thoughts, but his mind feels sluggish. He realizes his mana hasn't fully recovered. He wonders if he was poisoned or attacked on the Raka Plains, but feels no such symptoms. He only recalls being suddenly overwhelmed by drowsiness after using celestial channeling. His hand slides over to the sword resting beside him on the bed. He acknowledges that a lot happened the day before, but he didn't think he was tired enough to simply pass out. Then, his eyes fix on the sword, and a thought suddenly strikes him. He recalls his new habit. Ever since learning magic, he'd practice right before bed, using his power until he was nearly out of mana to gain experience. Last night, he did the same, but then attempted to use celestial channeling to speak with the goddesses, a skill that required 60 mana. He didn't have enough on his own, but he realizes that the short sword from Paisasan was the key. Just by equipping it, his maximum mana increased, allowing him to cast the spell. He pieces it together. He used the short sword to make up for the mana he lacked. A new question forms in his mind. What would happen if he let go of the sword after using up that extended mana pool? The answer is immediate and grim. He imagines himself collapsing mid-hunt, surrounded by monsters. He realizes that passing out from mana depletion is a common mechanic in the fantasy worlds he knows and a surefire way to die out in the field. He must be much more careful. The full implication of his carelessness sends a chill down his spine. He pictures Rhea and the goddesses panicking, realizing he could die at this rate. Depending on this world's mechanics, he might have been considered dead. Shaking off the morbid thought, he resolves to get his head back in the game, knowing today will be a busy day. Out in the town, Loki plans his errands. First, collect the confiscated items from yesterday, then head to Yagav's place. He's already arranged an appraisal appointment with Paisasan. Elsewhere, a group of adventurers discusses him. One confirms he's the one who got Aden's party permanently stripped of their hunter status and that he's carrying their gear. Another warns his dismissive friend not to underestimate the boy. He anticipated this. His mind drifts to his past experiences in online games, where standing out always attracted gossip. He knows how that gossip festers into envy and resentment, eventually turning into direct attacks. He's seen players quit entirely because they couldn't handle the pressure. He remains unfazed. As long as the guild keeps functioning, what other hunters say is irrelevant. With a cold, focused look, he thinks to himself what a waste it is to throw away passion and time over a stranger's malice. He sits alone, reflecting that dealing with strangers is a waste of time and that solitude is far more comfortable. His quiet moment is shattered when a group of children, Mei-chan, Zink, and Pata, accompanied by a large, friendly adventurer, bursts in, calling out his name. Startled, Loki looks up from his seat. The group approaches his table. Zink explains they wanted to thank him immediately, knowing he usually hunts early in the morning. He adds that Mei's mother ran into Amandan the previous night. Mei-chan offers her own thanks for the potions, while the large adventurer offers to help carry his things. Slightly taken aback by the sudden, friendly attention, Loki simply agrees with a quiet, yeah. Later, he walks through the grand, sunlit nave of a church, announcing his intention to pray to the goddesses. As he passes, an onlooker remarks on his piety. A voice then calls out that the next audience with the goddesses is about to begin. Inside, he meets Mirai San, the nun. She presents him with an item, explaining it's an apology for the class selection incident and that he shouldn't feel bad. She suggests he consider an offering for the day and mentions she will stay to pray a little longer. Loki accepts. He stands before an altar, hands clasped in prayer. He closes his eyes and calls out, asking if the goddesses are there, stating that he has come to see them. In response, a brilliant light fills his vision. A divine voice echoes from within the brightness, telling him that he can open his eyes. As his sight returns, he finds himself before 3 women. They introduce themselves as Feral, goddess of life, Phelan, goddess of fertility, and Least, goddess of commerce. They welcome him, acknowledging that it is their first time meeting face-to-face and thanking him for coming. Loki is utterly dumbfounded, his face contorting with awe. He internally screams that they are gorgeous, just as he had expected after meeting the previous trio of goddesses. His mind races as he takes in each one. He identifies Lee Sama as a paragon of mystery, with her elegance and intellect. He sees Feral Sama as the very embodiment of kindness, radiating overwhelming warmth. And he finds Phelan Sama dazzling, the pinnacle of cuteness. He found the sight of the 3 goddesses to be an overwhelming feast for his eyes, prompting him to wonder if he could go home. The goddess Least informed him that they could hear his thoughts, while Phelan emphatically declared that leaving was not an option. Before he could process this, a table and chair materialized out of thin air. Phelan cheerfully gestured towards it, urging him to come forward and take a seat. As he sat, he couldn't help but marvel at the mysterious space he was in. Phelan commented on how impressive it was that he had snapped at the goddesses Regal and Alicia and survived, noting that they aren't known for their gentle temperaments. Phelan then leaned in close, reassuring him that it was all fine now. She explained that they simply wanted to get along with him, as he possessed no world-destroying skills. The goddess Feral added that they had been cautious because he was an unknown, while Lise calmly stated she'd heard his story and understood his guardedness. The revelation prompted him to ask if he was currently in his soul form. Phelan confirmed with a cheerful exactly. She elaborated, explaining that since they couldn't bring his physical body to their realm, they simply snapped his soul out and brought it to them directly. He then realized that his mind's eye skill didn't work here, just as Rhea had predicted. This sparked a new worry. His physical body was now a defenseless shell. Least sensed his concern and told him not to worry, as they had cast space-time magic over it, causing time to flow very slowly for his body. This revelation made him wonder if goddesses having skills was normal, as he'd assumed they were simply cheat characters. Lise confirmed that they do have other skills. He recalled Ria's words, and Lise clarified that while not everything is possible, many skills are. Leaning forward with an intense curiosity, Lise revealed their true motive. Just as he was curious about them, they were equally curious about him and wanted to hear his story. She addressed him directly as Loki-kun, stating that they share the same feelings. Overwhelmed by her proximity and the weight of her words, Loki could only blush, completely flustered. He stares, completely flustered, as the goddess Lise leans closer, her expression inviting. She assures him that he can ask them anything he is curious about. Taking her at her word, he eagerly begins to ask about the world's mechanics. The goddesses, Lise, Phelan, and Feral, seem happy to indulge his curiosity, explaining the intricacies of skills and status effects. His enthusiasm boils over. Feral explains that this is a world managed by Furzasama, a wondrous work of the gods. Loki sighs in deep satisfaction, marveling at the existence of exclusive skills and the romance of longevity, which he feels gives life its meaning. But his elation quickly fades as a troubling thought surfaces. He recalls Ryasama mentioning that this world was abandoned, a comment that sours his impression of Furzasama. His expression turning serious, he asks the goddesses if it is truly wise to trust Furza so much. Phelan's casual response makes Loki wince internally. He reflects that he has never seen a good outcome from blind faith in a god. He immediately regrets his words, worrying that he spoke out of turn and created an unnecessary misunderstanding. The goddesses then clarify their position. They are forbidden from directly interfering with the lower world. Even if Furzasama has hidden intentions, their roles remain unchanged. In the end, all they can do is maintain the status quo while observing and guiding the world toward a better future. He processes their explanation, concluding that no matter what mortals think, nothing can truly be changed. A renewed sense of regret washes over him as he stares at Lise, certain he said something unnecessary. Her gaze softens into a warm smile. She remarks on what a kind soul he has, to be so concerned about them. Flustered, Loki blurts out that he is still not used to having his thoughts read so easily. At this, Phelan interjects, suggesting to the others that it is now okay to tell Loki something. Feral and Lise agree. Caught off guard by their sudden consensus, Loki asks what it is they want to tell him. An image of a familiar blue and white planet forms in the void before him. Lise's voice cuts through his confusion with a single, stunning question. Are you familiar with a world called Earth? He listened as the small goddess, Rhea, explained that Earth is one of the worlds managed by the god Furza, and that it's considered his greatest success. The dark-haired goddess, Phelan, pouted with jealousy. Loki confirmed that it was the world he used to live in, a fact the light-haired goddess, Alicia, noted with a knowing look, having suspected a connection. Reacting to Phelan's jealousy, Loki asked what that implied about their current world. Alicia explained that this world had become overly dependent on magic and skills, causing its civilization to stagnate and begin a slow decline into ruin. With that context established, Rhea declared it was time to address the main topic. To prevent this ruin, she continued, they summon the souls of Earthlings. The reason is simple. They need the knowledge and wisdom of an advanced civilization to revitalize their own. Rhea then presented the image of a hero named Takuya, confirming he was one such Earthling. She explained that he has been spreading knowledge from his world, which is why it was worth giving him powerful skills. The pieces clicked into place for Loki. His eyes widened slightly as the realization dawned on him. So that was what was going on. He finally began to understand the source of the strange feelings he'd been having, though some parts remained unclear. The implication of the goddess's explanation led him to a single, vital question. Then what about me? His mind raced. Everyone else from Earth was working to help this world. He felt he had no right to complain about hero Takuya getting cheap powers, as he himself possessed none of the advanced knowledge this world was looking for. He had just been doing as he pleased, relying on the goddess's kindness without understanding the acorn-headed god's true intentions. He was forced to wonder if that was truly okay. Overwhelmed by this crisis of purpose, he pleaded with Alicia, please, just tell me already. As his soul form and his past self tumble through a void, a single, desperate question echoed in his mind. How should I live? Loki reflected on his past. Gaming had been his entire world. But when he was disowned by his family and thrust into the harshness of reality, he realized he had no notable skills or achievements to his name. He saw himself as a shut-in with no experience in creating anything, wondering what the goddess Rhea could possibly expect from him. The weight of this insecurity carried over into his conversation with the other goddesses, as he apologized, admitting he might not be of any help. In response to his despair, a new goddess, Lise, appeared before him. She explained that he shouldn't worry about such thoughts. Even just by possessing knowledge from his world, he was already contributing to raising the level of civilization in this one. She encouraged him to first simply enjoy his new life without concern. The other goddesses chimed in with their support. Alicia reminded him that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, while Phelan added that they simply hoped he could leave behind something that only he could create, all while enjoying his new life. Their words gave him pause as he contemplated the idea of something only he could do. Seeing this, Liszt remarked to the others that it felt presumptuous to ask too much from him, considering he had been brought to their world against his will. Following this sentiment, Liszt addressed Loki directly. She explained that Earthlings are, in a sense, living legacies, their lives alone holding value. She offered her assistance, telling him that if he ever felt uncertain about his path, he should consult with her. He reacted with immediate suspicion. He found her offer far too forward, questioning her motives and rudely asking what she was plotting. He declared that, as the goddess of commerce and someone knowledgeable about otherworlders, she was the natural person to consult, but her directness made him wary. His outburst faded quickly. He thanked the goddesses, admitting their words put him more at ease. Though he still felt he might not be capable of much, he promised to help in any way he could. He resolved to take things slow, acknowledging his tendency to panic and sink deeper into anxiety, even back on Earth. With his mind settled, he took action on that resolution. Arriving at the Adventurers Guild, he strode purposefully towards the entrance, deciding to focus on the single step right in front of him. He announced to the staff member at the door that he had come at the request of the guildmaster. He stepped inside, where the guildmaster waited. Immediately, whispers erupted among the other adventurers. They questioned why the guildmaster would personally request a mere kid. Loki overheard them, and though he had expected it, he couldn't help but feel the lingering tension in the air. He stood before the guildmaster, who remarked that the rumors spreading about him might actually be beneficial, as they would likely deter others from interfering. With that, the guildmaster invited him to follow, explaining it was a personal request. He led Loki through a cluttered back office, apologizing for the mess, and granted him permission to proceed further inside. As they reached another doorway, the guildmaster turned, his expression serious, and warned that their subsequent discussion must remain absolutely confidential. Internally, Loki thrilled at the prospect, feeling as though he were about to enter a secret underground room. He followed the guild master down a long, dark staircase as Yagav explained the history of what he was about to see. The items were discovered 6 years prior by a hunter in the Palmyra Great Forest and have been kept under strict security by his order ever since. At the bottom of the stairs, the guild master presented 3 display cases. Inside lay a sneaker, a wristwatch, and a smartphone, all items that should only exist on Earth. Yagav asked Loki if he recognized them, and Loki confirmed without hesitation that he did. He then asked for permission to examine the items more closely. The guild master agreed, on the condition that Loki provide an explanation in return, while Amandan noted she hadn't heard of any other similar items being found. Amandan clarified that she had only learned of the situation that morning and had simply been instructed to watch for anyone holding similar relics. Loki reassured her, adding that he was surprised she already knew he was from another world. His attention then turned to the cracked screen of the smartphone. He mused that while the Hunters Guild was supposedly independent, a discovery of this magnitude would naturally cause a commotion and necessitate a report to the state. Turning back, he asked where they should begin. The guild master acknowledged that the terms might be unfamiliar to him, but Loki clarified that the difficulty wasn't in the terminology, but in figuring out how to begin the explanation itself. As Loki began his explanation, a strange phenomenon occurred. The space around the guild master seemed to distort, filled with cosmic imagery, as if his very being was dissolving. Amandan watched in shock, realizing with alarm that Yagav appeared to be melting. The strange distortion around the guild master vanishes as quickly as it appeared. He clenches his jaw, muttering in frustration that recreating the technology seems impossible. He suggests that even recreating a part of it might be a lost cause, something Loki should simply give up on, leaving the young man staring in confusion. He then asks Loki what kind of advanced world he came from, admitting he is no expert. The guild master explains that the fundamental rules of their 2 worlds are completely different. Loki's is a world without magic or skills, where all phenomena are understood through observation and experimentation. He concludes that bridging this technological gap could take a genius 1,000 years. Seeing the guild master's despondence, Loki's attention shifts to the other relics. He points out a clock, noting that such things exist in this world. Rhea appears, confirming that noble families do possess similar timepieces, but clarifies their wind-up mechanisms. Loki then has a realization, exclaiming that this particular clock from his world runs on batteries. An idea sparks in his mind. He suggests that while recreating the smartphone might be out of reach, other items could be possible. He points to a wristwatch, explaining it's simply an evolution of the small pocket watches that royalty in this world possess. He excitedly elaborates that by attaching the small timepiece to a leather strap, it becomes a much more accessible item. He moves on to another item, a sneaker, explaining that the same logic holds true. He describes it as footwear specialized for running, proposing that even if they used different materials, simply measuring its internal dimensions to recreate the design would result in shoes that are vastly more comfortable and easier to walk in. As Loki finishes his enthusiastic explanation, he looks over at the guild master, who is now smiling faintly. Loki offers a slightly sheepish "thank you for your valuable opinion," which seems to amuse Yagav. Amandan, watching the exchange, remarks to herself how unusually expressive Yagav is today. The guild master, now holding a small, light device, hands it toward Loki, encouraging him to try it. He states that even though Loki claims to have no expertise, the act of trying it out is what's important. He takes a moment to process the guild master's words. A new understanding dawns on him. This wasn't just about a goddess striving for the world's development. Yagav's true purpose in showing him these relics was to provide clues about how they were made and what they were for. With this realization, his expression shifts to one of firm resolve. He knows he can contribute. He turns back to the others and makes an offer. He has other tools from his world, and he asks if they would like to see them. Later, back in his room at the guild, Loki reflects that he kept Amandine so busy she likely missed her chance to eat. He asks Yagav where she has gone, and the guild master informs him she went shopping. Realizing he is the only resident currently in this part of the building, Loki decides it's safe enough to quickly inspect his own items before she gets back. He lays out his personal effects on the desk for the guild master to inspect. Yagav stares in astonishment at the collection: a calculator, a flashlight, a pen, and a smartphone. The old man declares them to be national treasure level second relics, amazed to see something from another world that still functions. Loki confirms that this is a rough summary of what he possesses. Loki notes Yagav's unusual energy, realizing the guild master is quite knowledgeable about such items. Yagav explains that in this country, distinctly foreign artifacts are called relics. He was assigned to this case specifically because of his expertise, recalling the initial discovery of items like a modern sneaker, a wristwatch, and a smartphone. To demonstrate, Loki switches on the flashlight. The beam is so intense that Yagav recoils, momentarily blinded. Loki quickly apologizes, warning him not to look directly into the light. The guild master, shielding his eyes, marvels at the incredible brightness and asks how it's made. Loki clarifies that it isn't magic, but rather batteries and LEDs, and that magic could probably be used to recreate it. Their demonstration is suddenly interrupted as Amandine bursts through the door, shouting a greeting and announcing she's brought snacks. The abrupt entrance startles them both. Once the commotion settles, Loki steers the conversation back on track. He explains to Yagav that while he wants to help recreate tools from his world, items requiring modern technology like plastics or batteries are impossible to reproduce here. With that caveat, Loki presents a simple sheet of paper, calling it a convenient item that can be recreated. He notes that while paper books exist in this world, they are rare, and mass production could change everything. To the astonishment of Yagav and Amandine, he confidently states he can do it, recalling how he made paper from reshaped milk cartons as a 7-year-old in elementary school. He clarifies that he only reshaped the material, but the principle is simple. As long as one has substitute materials, even a child could make something similar. He quickly sketches out the process. Mix the materials, drain the moisture, and let it harden. The implications dawn on Yagav instantly. His eyes widen as he realizes that using paper instead of wooden blocks would revolutionize information management. He envisions a world where information spreads more widely and quickly, bringing definite change. Filled with excitement, he turns to Loki and asks if he will teach them the method. Loki readily agrees. Loki, however, is taken aback by the guild master's intensity. He insists that there's no need for an additional reward beyond what the request offers, as he didn't expect Yagav to do so much for him. Just witnessing something so amazing is enough. He reflects on the guild master's invigorating liveliness. The old man's face, contorted in shock and awe at the flashlight's beam and the lightness of the modern items, is a sight to behold. Yagav's energy is almost infectious. Yagav, however, turns serious. Stroking his chin, he admits that while he doesn't fully understand the principles, he won't be satisfied otherwise. He is determined to see this through, whatever it takes. The guild master, having confirmed Loki's familiarity with the Demon King's subjugation chronicle, questioned him about his opinion of the hero, Takuya. The name struck Loki with force, the cheat hero Takuya. He realized with certainty that this hero must have come from the same world as him. Seeing Loki's recognition, Yagav declared that this knowledge simplified matters greatly. He leaned forward, his expression shrewd, and made a tantalizing offer. Did Loki want to know about the other otherworlders who were also in this world? Inside a well-appointed room, Guildmaster Yagav raises a glass to Loki. As a reward for accompanying him all day, Yagav offers to tell Loki about the 4 people from another world who are shaking this one to its core. This begins the tale of the 4 reincarnated. He gestures to a map where pieces represent the key figures. Hero Takuya of the Elgrin Kingdom, Marshal Shiva of the Velflare Empire, Great Magnate Marie of the Albert Kingdom, and Beast King Hans of the Alien Republic. Hearing the names, Loki wonders how many of them might be Japanese, and notes that in Shiva's case, it could be a handle name, much like his own. Before Yagav continues, Loki interjects with a question, asking for confirmation that he arrived in this world a few months ago. He recalls the moment he was suddenly dumped into the Great Palmera Forest, still in his business suit, and carrying his briefcase. He asks why Yagav brings it up. The Guildmaster explains that this is the crucial distinction. The 4 individuals he mentioned were all born into this world as infants, retaining the memories of their past lives. This process is what separates them from the other people from another world he is about to discuss. Loki processes this new information, summarizing that the fundamental difference is between being reincarnated and being transported. Yagov confirms that this wording fits the situation well. He has a flash of understanding. Of course, someone who is suddenly transported, their age all wrong for this world, would stick out like a sore thumb. He realizes this is just as the goddesses said. The people they brought over had died in their previous lives, often violently, as suggested by the image of a truck, and were given a complete restart. His thoughts continue, concluding that there must have been some transported people before him, as the existence of relics from his world, a watch, a smartphone, a sneaker, proves it. However, he remains unsure whether their arrival was the work of the acorn-head god or some other interdimensional rift. Yagov explains that his earlier caution and testing of Loki's knowledge of the otherworld language stemmed from the fact that, as far as he knew, no one had ever claimed to be transported before. Feeling the pressure of the guild master scrutiny, Loki dismisses the apology. Yagov muses that while there are rumors of other reincarnators, the existence of a transported person like Loki is a new development. The reason for Yagov's test becomes clear. He suspected Loki might be working for hero Takuya. At this suggestion, Loki explodes with rage, shouting why he would ever be that man's pawn. Yagov, taken aback, can only apologize. Loki internally scoffs, believing the heroic tales about Takuya are just fabrications. Yagov remarks that with someone going around using the Demon King's name, he couldn't simply ignore the situation. He clarifies that his own name is Loki, admitting it's impressive in its own way to make up a story where he is the hero. Yagov then provides context on the real hero Takuya, the crown prince of the Elbran Kingdom, a dominant power in the Northwest, said to be an upright man who never kills without reason. With the misunderstanding cleared, Yagov steers the conversation back to the main topic. He continued his explanation of hero Takuya, suggesting that while the heroic tales surrounding him may be fiction, the nickname hero likely stuck due to his actual, formidable strength. Loki's internal reaction was one of disdainful confirmation. He pictured Takuya exactly as he'd imagined, a womanizer constantly surrounded by beauties. Yagov seemed to confirm this, noting Takuya's reputation as a womanizer. He then observed Loki's clear distaste, asking why he wasn't cool with that type of person. Yagov added that, despite this, Takuya was considered the most reasonable of the otherworlders, and even introduced the proverb, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down to this world." Loki silently disagreed with the assessment. The guild master then moved on to the other reincarnators. He described Marshal Shiva of the Velflair Empire, a dangerous figure rumored to kill even women and children without hesitation, who has been at war with Takuya's kingdom for 5 years. Next was Great Magnate Marie of the Albert Kingdom, a noble who amassed enormous wealth by using a transfer skill to monopolize logistics, supplying both sides of the war and effectively turning her kingdom into a personal fortress of commerce. Loki's face twisted in fury at the mention of such power. "To hell with cheat abilities," he seethed. Yagov noted his mixed feelings, summarizing that these three nations, driven by the reincarnator's immense power and outrageous methods, are the main forces shaping the world. He continued, explaining that while reincarnators did bring innovation, any country that failed to secure one for themselves was likely to be annexed. He surmised that the leaders of every nation probably felt this pressure. Finally, Yagov spoke of the fourth figure, Beast King Hans of the Alien Republic. The country was originally a disparate collection of beast folk, but after Hans, a man who commands monsters, took power, it became unified and much stronger, earning him his title. Loki's eyes widened in genuine surprise and delight. Beast folk? So they really exist. He considered that, of the four, Hans sounded the most decent and least driven by selfish desires. Yagov confirmed that Hans's actions were less flashy, but he was feared for his practice of attacking slave-owning nobles to liberate beastfolk slaves. As Almondan watched from the side, Loki processed the information. He realized that Yagov's perspective on these otherworlders felt different from what the goddesses had told him. Deciding he didn't want to die, he resolved to stay far away from the southwest region where the dangerous Shiva operated. Yagov, sensing his thoughts, simply told him to be careful. Leaning forward, the guild master reiterated his warning, stating once more that countries unable to secure a person from another world would likely be annexed. That's not all, he concluded gravely. Watch the movements of each country, too. He listened as Guild Master Yagov explained the grim reality of his situation. People believe that recruiting an otherworlder strengthens a nation, so if his identity were exposed, they would try to secure him by any means necessary. Yagov stressed that Loki's own perceived value was irrelevant to their ambitions. In response, Loki stated that he had no intention of opposing any nation and wouldn't mind a normal recruitment attempt. Yagov immediately dismissed the idea as impossible, remarking with a wry smile that he had expected such a naive answer. The guild master then advised him to stop his reckless hunting and live quietly, without standing out. But a fierce resolve hardened in Loki's eyes. He realized that if anyone came at him with force or tried to interfere with his desire to hunt monsters and grow stronger, he would have no choice but to respond in kind. As the tension subsided, Yagov noted the late hour and decided it was time to leave. Loki thanked him for his time as the guild master prepared to see him out. With a final, somber glance, Yagov expressed his hope that there would not be a second addend, a grim reminder of past tragedies. Before they parted, the guildmaster made a direct offer, asking Loki if he would consider joining him. He promised that if Loki did, he could offer a degree of protection without interfering with his goals. He explained that the desire to recruit an otherworlder for national strength applied to the Lagre's kingdom as well, making his offer a practical one. Loki, however, deflected with a slight smile, remarking that Yagov was surprisingly good at jokes and that he was used to them by now. The guild master chuckled, acknowledging that Loki was adept at brushing such matters aside. Loki assured him that he would be extremely careful. Yagov's demeanor became stern as he delivered a final ultimatum: ensure innocent civilians are never involved. Otherwise, the guild master would be prepared to oppose him and publicly brand him as a dangerous otherworlder. With a warning delivered, their meeting concluded under the dark night sky outside the Adventurers Guild. Watching the guild master walk away, lantern in hand, Loki reflected on their conversation. He concluded that Yagov's words were likely a mixture of genuine concern and calculated honesty. He considered the connections he had begun to form in the town, his mind flashing through the faces of those he'd met. But despite these budding relationships, he reaffirmed his resolve. Bazaar was only his starting point. No matter how favorable the conditions might become, he had no intention of staying, though his next destination remained an open question. He descended the stairs from the guildmaster's office, the man's warning echoing in his mind. Loki resolved then and there that he would not become the kind of person who forgets his debts, and he would do his best not to cause any more trouble. Sometime later, in the tall grass outside of town, he put his resolve into action. With a swift strike, he dispatched another poison mouse, its life ending with a faint squeak. Catching his breath, he pumped a fist in satisfaction. "All right, quota cleared," he declared, just as a notification confirmed his progress. Poison resistance LV7 acquired. He paused his hunt, reflecting that while poison mice were good targets, the gains were becoming smaller. Deciding it was about time for a change, he brought up his status screen to check all his skills, once again impressed by the sheer breadth of his abilities. He realized he had been unconsciously meeting the requirements for new skills while hunting. Because his agility stat had exceeded 300, he had unlocked both Godspeed and Blink. At the same time, he noticed that his arithmetic and taunt skills had also leveled up. Among the new acquisitions, one stood out, a skill he had no memory of learning: Berserk Elvine. Its description was alarming. After activation, all normal attacks would receive a fixed 120% status modifier for 1 minute, but he could only perform normal attacks against nearby living beings. The thought of what might happen was too frightening to test. Despite the unsettling discovery, his mind shifted to a core principle he understood from his past life. From the perspective of a hardcore online gamer, he knew that status bonuses were fundamentally god tier. In this world, they held insane value. He remembered the crucial lesson: there's no such thing as a useless skill. When a skill levels up, the related stats also increase, a perfect two birds with one stone system. He acknowledged that if not for the stat bonuses, he probably would have put off leveling his poison resistance, which had just granted him a significant boost to his defense. Putting his knowledge into practice, he resumed the hunt with renewed vigor. He activated Expand Vision to survey the area, used Search to pinpoint his next target, and then launched himself forward with Quick Step, a blur of motion through the tall grass. As he moved, a powerful feeling of exhilaration washed over him. A wide, confident smile spread across his face as the realization hit him with absolute certainty. He really was getting stronger. He reflects on his recent past, recalling how he'd been consumed with anxiety about his purpose in this world. The weight of conversations with the guildmaster about the nation and other grand matters had been overwhelming. But then a thought cuts through the gloom. With renewed clarity, he grips his sword, acknowledging that in the end, his own strength is all he can truly rely on. Visions of the formidable beasts that await him, giant spiders, savage wolves, and brutish ogres, flash through his mind. Despite the danger, and with his finances dwindling, a wide, determined grin spreads across his face. It is time to go to Lulu Forest. On the Rocker Plains, Loki and a group of young adventurers embark on a party hunt. This event takes place just before their planned excursion into the Lull Forest. Loki reflects on the path he is walking, a guide to conquering this new world for a former hardcore player like himself. Rewinding to just before the hunt, the party returns to the guild from a previous outing. The large adventurer with them notes that Loki is as strong as ever, effortlessly carrying an enormous, custom-made basket overflowing with carcasses. Loki credits the basket he had made, which allows him to focus solely on hunting. The younger adventurers, Zink, Mei-chan, and Pada, cheer at their successful haul. Following their return, Zink approaches Loki, flanked by a curious Mei-chan and Pada. He asks what the Rocker Plains are like, commenting on how Loki seems to be earning so much money. Zink admits that he and the others want to try hunting there themselves. Loki listens, understanding their burgeoning ambition. He recalls that he was the one who had hyped them up in the first place. A sense of responsibility washes over him. If these kids were to get hurt, he would never be able to face their parents. And so, Loki had volunteered to tag along and supervise their expedition. Back in the present on the Rocker Plains, the hunt is going smoothly. Loki notes how cleanly the party is handling the horn rabbits and checks on Mei-chan and Pada. Zinc, breathing a sigh of relief, admits that the hunt isn't as scary as he had imagined and that he might have been getting cold feet for nothing. The others are energized by their success, ready to carry plenty more. Loki encourages Zinc to do his best, noting that bagging poison mice would earn them more than his previous job. Taking this to heart, Zinc declares he's getting serious and activates his presence detection skill, immediately sensing a nearby creature. He stealthily moves through the grass, slipping in at the perfect angle to strike the poison mouse's neck. Loki watches, acknowledging that Zinc has good instincts. However, he also knows that success is precisely when people tend to let their guard down. Zinc shouts that he'll take care of this one, but his attack misses. The agile poison mouse dodges and immediately charges toward the rest of the party. Mei-chan and Pada cry out in fear as Zinc freezes, realizing the grave danger he has created. As the mouse lunges, Loki holds back, deciding that intervening would not help the young adventurers grow. In that split second, the large, heavy-set adventurer leaps forward, planting himself between the creature and the children. "I'll handle it," he roars, ready to intercept the attack. With the crisis averted, Zinc anxiously asks if everyone is all right. Standing safely behind their protector, Mei-chan confirms that they are fine, gratefully exclaiming that the large adventurer protected them. He watches as Loki, with tears streaming down his face, gives Pada a standing ovation. Loki shouts praises, declaring Pada's block to be amazing and his growth worthy of his entire heart, much to the delight of the rest of the party. Zinc, a grateful smile on his face, tells the others that he felt brave enough to try because they shared their precious potions with him. He is genuinely thankful for their support. Hearing this, Loki reflects internally. The realization that he was the trigger for their growth makes him happy, a precious feeling. However, it also reminds him of something from his old MMO days that he never quite understood. His mind drifts to a memory of a high-level player named Groudou, who would always wait at the respawn point to hand out items to new players. At the time, Loki had assumed he was just a rich, bored player, and simply took the items without a second thought. Now, realizing Groudou was likely happy just to see others grow, Loki feels a pang of regret for never having thanked him. Returning to the present, Zinc offers his thanks directly to Loki. Loki, in turn, feels a quiet satisfaction, glad that he chose to hold back and let the younger adventurers handle the situation on their own. He then points towards the horizon, asking the group if they think there used to be ruins in the area. Before they can properly consider it, he grins and admits that he is, in fact, the culprit behind the structures. As the others look on, confused, Loki explains that when he's adventuring solo, he creates stone pillars to stack his loot for easier management. To demonstrate, he places a hand on the ground and casts a spell. Generate long, deep stone pillar. A column of rock promptly erupts from the earth. The entire party is left speechless by the display of magic. The large adventurer declares he has witnessed a true mystery, while Zinc and Mei-chan shout in astonishment that Loki can use magic. Loki, slightly flustered, tells them they are overreacting. Zinc sputters in disbelief. Loki looks at him intently, asking if he has earth magic, and adds a curious observation that furry creatures are often drawn to those who wield it. The question makes Zinc look downcast. He admits that he probably just doesn't have any talent for magic, as he's never really tried to use it. Loki observes that Zinc hasn't hunted many of that type of monster yet, before changing the subject. He asks, out of curiosity, if Zinc happens to have a skill called Charge. He looks back at Loki, completely bewildered. "What's that?" he asks. "There's a skill like that." Seeing his companion's confusion, Loki quickly backtracks with an awkward laugh, telling him to forget the weird question. He claps his hands together, declaring their break over. Zinc, undeterred, points forward and rallies the group to keep hunting before the sun sets. As Mei-chan shouts her agreement, Pada reminds Zinc that this is a test run, advising him to get used to the action while he has the chance. Loki bursts through a doorway, his voice echoing with urgency as he activates his Divine Link skill. He shouts for a goddess, declaring he has a critical question about skills, one that might shake the very foundations of their world. In the street below, Zinc is startled by the sudden outburst. A serene voice responds to his call, instructing him to come to the church on the morrow. The image of a sun-drenched chapel on a hill appears in his mind. Instead of waiting, Loki finds himself instantly transported to a divine space. Before him stand three goddesses, Alicia, Regal, and Rhea. Alicia confirms they have been expecting him. Loki feels the immense pressure of their combined presence. Realizing this is an emergency formation, and the situation is more serious than he imagined. He begins his report by confirming one of the world's fundamental rules. He asks if it's correct that defeating a monster grants skill experience for that monster's abilities, such as gaining fire magic experience from a creature that uses fire magic. Rhea affirms that his assumption is correct. Following up, Loki asks how much contribution is needed to acquire skill. Alicia apologetically explains that such matters are decided by the higher god Furza and are beyond the knowledge of lesser gods. Realizing his first line of questioning is a dead end, Loki reveals the core issue. He acquired new skills after defeating, at most, 5 monsters. The goddesses are visibly taken aback. He lists the skills he obtained so quickly: earth magic, wind magic, and poison resistance, as well as charge and presence detection. A sense of dread washes over him as he comprehends the abnormality of his situation. Meanwhile, Ria notes with confusion that Alicia referred to Loki as male, prompting Loki to wonder if he said something strange. Alicia attempts to de-escalate the tension, suggesting they all calm down. She remarks that charge sounds like a straightforward offensive skill, but admits she is unfamiliar with it, questioning if it's a unique skill only Loki can obtain. Ria appears equally baffled. Her expression turns serious as she delivers a shocking revelation. Charge is a monster-exclusive skill. She explains it's natural for gods not to know of it, as they exist within the bounds of people and have never needed to investigate monster-specific abilities. Loki is stunned, blurting out that he came specifically to report this, that he, a human, somehow acquired a skill belonging to the horned beast race. Regal asks if this occurred during his survey, and Loki admits it was mostly out of curiosity. From their shocked reactions, Loki deduces that his case is unique among reincarnators. Regal concedes the point, reasoning that if Loki had malicious intent, he would have no reason to report such a dangerous anomaly. The immense stress of the situation weighs heavily on Loki. He acknowledges that they are all still in the dark, but he has one more thing to report. He presents evidence of belongings found in the city of Palmyra, items clearly left behind by people from Earth. He looks at the goddesses and asks if they were aware of this. He continues his explanation, admitting it is only his own interpretation, but he believes there may have been other people transported to this world just like him. The goddesses react with shock. Ria expresses her frustration, recalling how she had pitched a huge fit about Loki being the only survivor. Regal confirms the gravity of the situation, stating that they don't even have a record of their existence. Ria coldly concludes that they probably died right away, noting this is the first she's heard of it. Loki realizes the goddesses are just as uninformed as he is about those who may have been tossed into this world without skills. Elsewhere, a mysterious dark-haired woman wonders how anyone, even the higher god Furza, could be so cruel, questioning the purpose behind it all just as they were trying to set things right. The weight of this potential cruelty overwhelms Alicia, who tearfully declares she will go down to the surface world as well. Her outburst incites Loki's fury, and he erupts, demanding they stop making decisions without him. As Ria tells the anomaly to stay quiet, he feels a sense of déjà vu. He cuts them off, holding up a hand to halt the discussion. A wild, determined grin spreads across his face as he declares that they've got him, and resolves that whatever happens, happens. Alicia can only watch, murmuring his name as he seizes control of the situation.